Efed podcast, the podcast exploring our fantasy wrestling hobby where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real. I'm your host, Mikey Unlikely, and I'd like to thank you for joining us here on the Atomic Dropcast Network. All right, guys, we're back for episode 28 of the Efed podcast. Happy May. I don't know what the rest of you guys are doing, but I'm about to be heading back to work from the sounds of things. I've been quarantined now since the third week in March, and I gotta tell you, I'm ready to bust out. I've had enough. I've sat at home. I've written all the wrestling I can write for a short period of time. I need to get out, see the world, enjoy the summer, and I hope each and every one of you are going to do the same. Guys, welcome to another edition of the Efed podcast. Excited to have you again this week. We've got one of my great friends and buddies all time, one of the guys I've looked up to in this game. Everybody loves Will on the show, the handler of La Flama Blanca, as well as the Jay Harvey. We've got a new Efed Spotlight. It's back this week. Someone came through on the show. Remember, if you'd like your Fed spotlighted, all you got to do is get at me on those Twitter DMs, and you could be on a future edition of the Efed podcast. And also, we've got the Efed podcast question of the week, as always. Guys, buckle in. It's going to be a fun episode. Will's interview went really long. We're going to cut it back to just the entertaining bits. Love you, Will. And we've also got a couple other surprises we're going to slip in here. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show, but first, please pay attention to our sponsors. They're supporting the show each and every week. They're helping us out. They're giving us a hand. They're helping support the show both financially as well as support with the retweeting and the publishing and the marketing out there. So guys, please help our sponsors, and here is a word from each and every one of them.
Defiance, an angle fed boasting 8 years of continuous fantasy wrestling. Defiance offers opportunities for original characters, micros, a standalone website utilizing Backstage 3 script, and a forum hosted on the long-running FWrestling.com, as well as a roster full of some of the most experienced writers in the game. Come see for yourself at DefianceWrestling.com. That's DefianceWrestling.com.
Are you into MMA e-fetting? Check out one of the premier fantasy MMA gyms in our world, TW Combat Sports, housing fighters like Juanita Sanchez, Tommy Ward, and Rob Jones. You know you're getting the hardest hitting action with hashtag the TW Combat Show. So give them a follow on Twitter at TW Combat. Don't make them hurt you.
Modern Day Gladiators is a pro wrestling themed print and play game that uses a standard deck of cards and 21 unique wrestlers along with action cards to play out a myriad of matches from one-on-one to tag to in a cage. You can play solo, booking each show, but in this one, you're not going to know how this script's going to play out. You can play in a group, with each person playing as a wrestler, cutting promos, creating segments, which those are going to impact your options when the action inevitably ends up in the ring. To learn more, visit DriveThruRPG and search for Modern Day Gladiators, the best wrestling imaginable.
The Efed question of the week.
The Efed question of the week is brought to you by the EWC. The Extreme Wrestling Corporation is the game's longest-running roleplay Efed, having been established in 1997. With over 100 active role players across 4 unique brands, the EWC offers opt-in booking on all of its bi-weekly shows. It's home to Stranglemania and the 4-day wrestling festival known as WrestleFest. The EWC is built on its welcoming community with zero bias and no drama. All styles are welcome. Come check out the EWC today at EWC4life.com. That's EWC, the number 4, life.com. All right, it's time for the Efed podcast question of the week. And this week's question of the week, who would be your Efed character's final feud against and why? Lastly, who's going over? Answer in the comments below, and here's what I got back from you guys. At Dave's Characters, for Jessie Salco, it would be Amy Santino, her friend, former tag partner, and occasional rival. For Caleb, it'd be Fenris, as he terrifies Caleb. At I Am Jackie M, if my old-time ward would bring back Hellcat, it would definitely be one last dance between them. Failing that, at Spartan, or Artemis V, or Raging Ned, or Auto-Tune My Penis. Well, that's a weird one to say. At TN Outlaw Kane. Be a tough one for me, been so many greats if I narrowed it down. At Daniels_Brett, or L. Chris Matthews. Far as going over, it depends on the lead up, on what's on the line, and what's best. At Jenna CWF. For Jenna, she has maintained a lot of amazing feuds, but overall her biggest rival would be Sabrina Davis. Jenna would definitely go over. She is known for breaking tradition, so she would go out a winner. At Clownrot says no feud, but checking off his at Headstrong HSW list. Top 3 being Man with No Name, El Nutso, and Chris Carmichael. It doesn't matter who wins. At J Jurgen. Neither man would win, they're just gonna kill each other. At Distorted Amber. I feel like it would always have to end this way with us killing each other one last time. At One True Ripper DB. Maybe you'd even finally get your win. Heyo. At I'm Just Some Guy 1. There's only one person I would want for Hammer's final feud, and that's at Eli Flynn Buck. Best friends, bitter enemies, brothers-in-law. And most of all, Eli's handler is my best friend in the game. I rate my best stuff when it involves Eli and Hammer, and Eli goes over, no question. At UWF Chris Spade, tough to answer. A part of me would want it to be against some of my best rivals like UWF Gary Reese or Pretty Ricky. The other part wants it to be against someone I've never faced before but interacted a lot with and have respect for, like Whammy Bar, Bobalicious One, or Desmond Moss. At Molly_Hatchet, it would most likely end where it began with Von Terminator. At Efed Wrestler, I've already sunset that portion. Now my role is exclusively to elevate others, make someone else the man. Sweet. At A_Man Possessed, there are a bunch of really good options for guys Kai's feuded with over the years. Who would make sense? At J Jurgen, at Aaron Arkham, and at Wrestle_Marcus are probably the most logical options of the group. At Xavier Reed, I feel like since I walked into the EWC, Ace King and Xavier have been linked together, and if I was going to hang it up, I think he would be the perfect opponent to have one last feud with. Ace would go over because he always goes over. Pretty sure it's in his contract. At Sean_Warstein, our good friend Fuzz, I have no equal. There will be no final feud. I will fade away and just leave without saying a word. That's not very Fuzz-like. He's going to say something. At Def Reaper, welcome back, brother. It would most definitely be one last run for Stalker. Many choices of opponents, most notable Rocco Damon, but I'm selfish enough to say I want Stalker to go over. He's a menace, pure evil, and finally needs that chance to grip his crown like the king he is. At Centurion Real, it would be against Fuzz, and I would go over like I normally do. Heyo, got him. At Kendrick's Cross, plenty of choices. I'm not going to read them all, you tagged 40 people, but he loves a lot of people, a few he's faced, and a few he would like to again. At Project Holland 3, I have not decided. It's going to be somebody new that I really like, that I want the rocket strapped to their ass after they beat me. At Griffin Hawkins, or at Whammy Bar, he lists a ton of choices. Go ahead and check those out in the comments. I'd put one of them over and end my career on a high note. The Dropkick King says likely an Adrian student. If I had to make that call right now, it'd probably be Dear Future Kens and putting her over. At Judas Lasher, Judas's final match was always meant to be against Vlad Blackheart. A passing of the torch kind of thing. Obviously that can't happen now. I feel like a friendly hardcore match with at the Mangler DPW would be a perfect exit. At JVD Rooster, Jan has concluded most of his feuds, but has one match that I've thought about running, but not just yet. It would be his last match in his opponent's first match, and he knew he would probably do the job on. At Godly Ken Davison, if I had to choose, it would be Mr. Popular from the old Steelside Wrestling Fed. The Fed was built on our feud, and I would love one more go-round with him. It's too bad he retired a long, long time ago. At Failed Rhetoric, my last opponent would be La Flama Blanca. Have to ride off in the sunset with the L. At Auto-Tune My Penis, I would want to go out the way I came in, fighting with my best friend at Notorious513 over a girl. And I would go out on my back. At Georgie RRC, this is a tough one. There are 4 possibilities, but Fallen Angel, As they have a ton of history, he would return to take out Georgie once and for all. Both would go over in a steel cage and out after months of buildup. Let's see what kind of answers we got on over at the Discord. You can check that out in the Twitter profile. It's on one of the Discord servers. We've got all kinds of stuff you can do in there, including answer the question of the week, interview questions, talk about wrestling, talk about life, talk about anything you want. It's a nice little Efed community. On the Discord, we got Judge Megan. If Sabrina Baker had her last match, it would be against anyone that's doubted her or done her dirty in the past. There's a long list of who I would want her to face off against. Now, as far as who's going over in the feud, it's actually who makes it out alive to end the feud. There you have it. Megan's gonna kill you. At Whirlwind's head booker, if Jacob Hot Stuff was up for his final match, there's no doubt in my mind it would have to be versus Melinda Rhodes to finally put that angle to bed. And like a good villain, he would get his just dues in the end. If Alan, one true god, Christopher had his final match, it would only be across the ring from Frank Washington. With the history between the two, you could write RP after RP with a 60-minute match easily. While I'd love to say Alan, being the epitome of God amongst men, should go over, the one thing that would shut him would be the finality. That one man that knows him better than any other to best him in a glorious combat. This is a match over a decade in the making. Someday. Up next is Seth is Burns. If Oscar Burns had a last match, it would most likely be Scott Stevens, who had been his most major rival, as both guys have rose up the card over the last couple of years. I'm winning because I put that schmuck over more times than I can count. Shots fired. Love you, Justin. Good answer, Seth. Rick's final match. This is at Rickdiculous. Our good friend, he's back. We found him in the wilderness hunting MILFs. Rick's back. Final match will be against a 100 competitor gauntlet match versus 99 MILFs. Rick's going over unless the final MILF is his mom, which would be an amazing monkey wrench to throw into that storyline. Oh, I'm not so sure. I'm glad you're back. At the Matt Loaf. At the current standings where I am at the moment, I'd like my Stacey Jones character's final feud to be with fellow hybrid star who has both Stacey's bitter rival and is now a very close friend, Ashley Kenyon. The main reason for this is every time they've faced thus far, Ashley has always defeated Stacey, so I'd want Stacey to go over finally defeating her. Deacon's final match in a perfect world would be Eddie Love, the guy who helped propel Deacon and Deacon helped propel him. Or Mike Randalls and Craig Miles in a match for the ages against Cats. Or High Flyer in a battle of two old enemies. But to do it right, probably MJ Flair. Deacon's elevation is directly tied to MJ's daddy, and it'd be an honor to do the job for her. Thanks, Warren. Appreciate your insight as well on the Efed podcast question of the week. Guys, you can get your answers in on Twitter, on Discord. What are you waiting for?
It is I, the lyrical miracle, the sexual, intellectual, the cunning, linguist, and the quintessential stud muffin. Joel, nothing puts your mother's bed on blast like loving listening to the Efed podcast. Gertner, listen to Fantasy Wrestling's #1 podcast, hosted by Mikey Unlikely, where the wrestling is written and the characters are real. efedpodcast.com.
All right, guys, up next is the Efed Spotlight. And this week, the spotlight is on hybrid wrestling. Hybrid wrestling can be found at hybrid.freeforums.net, on Twitter at hybrid_school and hybrid_wrestle. They are an angle fed, and they are two branded. They have a brand called Ascension and a brand called Unleash. Both are individually run by two different people, And Ascension is recommended for new writers or people who have been out of the game for a while Unleashed would be the show with people who are very experienced and active. The rules are simple. The more active your character is with segments, and the more active you are on Twitter, the higher chance you have of getting pushed and winning matches. Pretty much, if you put in the work and the angles, then you'll get rewarded. There are no word limits in Hybrid. You can write as little or as much as you'd like. They do have weekly shows. So Ascension would be 1 week, and then Unleashed would be the following week. So even though it is a weekly show, you're not necessarily booked on a weekly basis. They also have pay-per-views every couple of months. There are brand-only pay-per-views, and as well as a few cross-branded pay-per-views throughout the year. Now, over on Unleashed, they have a couple championships. They have the Grand Championship. They have the Evolution Championship, the Pinnacle Championship. They have the Fusion Championship, which is only defended in multi-person matches. The Duality Championship, which is basically the tag team titles. Over on Ascension, they have some titles as well. They have the Honor Championship, the Underground Championship, which is defended in hardcore title matches. The Gateway title, the Gateway Championship, which is defended at every television and pay-per-view for the Ascension brand. The Twin Star Championships is also another tag team title version for that show. Hybrid Wrestling also offers the Triad Championships, which is a trio title that can be defended on either show and is the only title to go between both. So no matter what kind of wrestler you have, no matter what kind of position you want to fit in, they've got everything from top tier to hardcore to multi-person to tag team to everything in between, to workhorse titles to trios. I love the ideas. I love the options. As far as some of the wrestlers on the roster, we've got Melinda Rhodes, Ursula von Rossbach, Vanity Thompson, Zoe Madigan Starr, Danny Anderson, Stacy Jones, Ashley Kenyon, Adrian Cochran, Kayla Richards, and Griffin Hawkins. If you want to check them out, guys, they're at hybrid.freeforums.net and on Twitter at hybrid_wrestle, hybrid_school. This is a large fed. The Unleashed show has a roster of about 50 people. The Ascension show has about 40. Get in where you fit in, guys. Obviously, there's a lot of good things going on over at Hybrid, or they wouldn't have so many handlers. Hybrid's been around for over 3 years now, with results posted on time, and the following show card up within a couple days. The company has its own training facility called the Hybrid Combat School that have trainers and students whose profiles can be found on the website. These can be used freely and are usually put up against new starters in their debut matches. Really cool concept, Hybrid Wrestling. Check them out. hybrid.freeforums.net. Hey everybody, it's Mikey. No, we're not back to the show just yet. First, I want to tell you about my Patreon. Now I know what you're thinking, oh no, am I going to have to pay for the podcast? No. The answer is emphatically no. The show has been and forever will be free. No, Brunk, you will not have to pay for the podcast. However, we have been asked by a handful of people how they can help support the show. And we've also been asked, mostly by Fuzz, why we didn't have a Patreon yet. And I quote, "You stupid I can't believe you don't have a Patreon. I will hurt you if you don't take my money now." End quote. That was Fuzz. He's a scary dude. So with that in mind, you can find us at patreon.com/Efed podcast. Contributions start as low as $3 a month. Thank you very much for your consideration. Please get Fuzz off our backs. And welcome to another edition of the Efed podcast interview series. This week, we've got the handler of La Flama Blanca, the Jay Harvey, and one of my best friends in the game, a guy who's been around forever, one who took me under his wing during my second run and when I joined Wrestle UTA and really helped me become a better writer and get with a good group of guys. This is Will, like I said, handler of LFB, the Jay Harvey. He's here with us on the Efed podcast. Will, how are you?
I'm good, Mikey. You're such a bullshit artist, brown noser. I mean, I love it. I'm not gonna lie, I do love it. But
I got to come up with one of these every single week, Will.
yeah,
Will he make
I
it?
wrote that a long time ago.
I just freeballed that. I'm not going to lie to you.
You freeballed it. I'm freeballing it right now.
This is going to be a fun interview, guys. Will and I go back all the way to like 2015. I hated him before I loved him. And then since then, it's been I love you, Will, on a constant basis.
Always one of the main supporters of me. Someone who is a close friend of mine. We still keep in contact.
Yes.
I didn't really take you under my wing, but like I will take 1% of the credit, and 99 the rest of it is all you.
You're being modest, but I appreciate it. Yes.
I was going to say 2%.
But you are a 1%er.
Yes.
Yes.
In this scenario, yes.
In this very fun game we play. Will, thanks so much for joining us. I'm so glad we got this interview. You were planned for like December or January, and due to cancellations, I forced you in here early.
If it was up to you, I would have been probably one of the first handful of interviews.
When did I hit you up the first time? Back in December, January?
When you started.
November.
Whenever you're doing something, always, and I'll just tell you no.
Yeah, that's right. Got to get a no from you first. Awesome.
Yeah.
But I got you up here. I got you in here. You're not currently playing the game, but you are a veteran of the game, long time, and you're recently out of it.
Yes. Well, not a long time. I mean, I'll get into that with the questions, but been around for a long time. There was a huge gap in between, but yeah.
I think that's the way it is for most people, and that's what I'm finding through these interviews, is we all play it, we all suck, we all take a long break, and we come back and we're actually more mature, better writers, and so on and so forth.
I don't know if mature is the right word.
Well, not you, but the rest of us. Bastard.
I've been going over my answers. Like I know all the questions. Like I'm reading off my script right here.
Good. Read off this one then. How did you get into professional wrestling?
I feel like I came out of the womb liking wrestling. My mother would tell me a story when she was younger. When her uncles would come over, they would turn off whatever she was watching on TV and put on wrestling. So when I was born, I remember 4 or 5, like early on, like I was a huge Hulk Hogan fan. And I remember going to Jim Cornette's favorite place, the Nassau Coliseum on Long Island, and seeing Hulk Hogan, and just always been a Hulk Hogan guy. But, you know, early on, my brother watched it. My mother kind of watched it, but living in New York, I had access to everything. Like I've heard a lot of the different podcasts, like your shows, where guys wouldn't see wrestling until, you know, the 2000s, or because it didn't get to their area, or they'd have the recap shows. I literally had WWF, I had NWA, then WCW, ECW early on. So the first, really, like I said, from birth to about 12, 13, I was able to watch all of that stuff. I heard about New Japan. I knew about that, but I wasn't able to, especially with the early stages of the internet, you know, having dial up, I would never be able to watch any of that.
All you would see was a guy get dropped on his head in like one quick clip or something.
Not even, like I would try to find something with it, but I was just never ever able to. I always wanted to, but of course later on, you know, you can watch New Japan on the internet or on Access. If it's still on Access, but wrestling was always a part of my life. Then I stopped, when I started trying to, like, you know, get pussy, smoke weed, and play music. Like I stopped. And then it was really when I got back into Efeding around 14, 15, like you had mentioned earlier. And then I got back into it. I'm not able to watch it as frequently and as much as I would like to, because, you know, as being a father, sometimes it's just not in the cards. So you don't have the time. And he's like, kind of like, I mean, I know I love him and he's my son. He's kind of like a little bitch when it comes to the TV. And I can only watch things he wants to watch.
Yeah.
He did fall asleep on Rumble one time. I wanted to watch the Rumble with him, and he fell asleep, which is kind of like in a nutshell. I mean, I'll try as he gets older. But wrestling has always been a part of my life.
That's awesome. It's great that you got everything too and had access to everything. Like you said, we always hear from people and, hey, we only had one. We only had this. So it's different to hear from a perspective who had options and availability of everything.
Oh, yeah. Like I was able to watch Flair and Steamboat, Sting and NWA, and WWF, Hogan, Warrior, Roberts, all that. And then, like as when WCW like started to like pick up, when Hogan went over there. And I remember, cause like I've always been a night crawler. So like when I was in grade school, like Friday night, Saturday night, I'd be up until 2-3 o'clock in the morning, sometimes even later. And I remember flicking around the channels and I remember seeing wrestling at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was the most violent, barbaric, awesome shit I've ever saw in my life. And that's why I'm a huge ECW fan. I always have been. It was new. And because it was on MSG, it was in my area. So I've always kind of been spoiled, like in my brother, like he had an illegal box. So we were able to watch a lot of the pay-per-views. I remember watching Starrcade. I remember watching like all like Royal Rumbles, even like the Hogan WWF days, the early on. Like I had VHS tapes of like him winning the fucking Rumble. I had him and Warrior at WrestleMania. So it was always something. And like I still liked other sports. I still did all that. Like being in New York, there's like 8,000 professional teams, but I always felt like if it wasn't the Yankees, it was wrestling, which was like sports wise the most watched and important thing to me.
There you go. And you mentioned you were a little Hulkamaniac, but who else were you big fans of growing up? And started kid wise.
This is a long answer. When I talked about seeing wrestling when I was 4 or 5, I remember seeing Hulk Hogan walk down the aisle from the nosebleeds and fucking crying. I remember hearing stories where people would be like, if like then they met Mickey Mantle, like grown men meeting Mickey Mantle and just crying. And like I feel like if I ever met Hulk Hogan, I would probably break down and cry.
Yeah,
because like Hulk Hogan was the shit. I try to think about why.
He was just an action hero, man.
He was larger than life. He was like one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't cognizant of it, but now like the dude was one of the hugest stars in the entire world, right up there with Jordan and Michael Jackson, arguably. Had to have been.
Easy. Early
WWF days, of course, Hogan and Savage. They were like my early on. But like I like the Hart Foundation. Of course, later on, I loved Bret. Bret was one of my favorites. Even when he did the heel turn and he was anti-America, like with him and Stone Cold, he was still one of my favorites. But like I like Jake the Snake Roberts. There was a lot of guys I liked. And then NWA, I liked Sting. I liked the Horsemen, even though they were heels. But like I liked Flair more babyface than heel, which was weird. I liked Steamboat, the Road Warriors. I will always love the Road Warriors because I would just watch and just wait for them to come out. Because like when they came out, it was like an explosion. People would go crazy. They're always one of my favorites, even though they were stiff as shit and they no-sold everything. ECW, I really like Sabu. RVD's one of my all-time favorites.
Same.
That guy him and Sabu were doing shit that no one was doing that. I'm a big Raven fan. I loved Raven. He was like Jake the Snake, like the modern Jake the Snake, but like I feel like a little bit more. He was, because he was darker. I clung to him. I like Salmon. I like most of those guys in ECW. And then like I didn't watch during the like ruthless aggression era of WWE. So like I saw like a couple of Punk matches. It wasn't until like later on, and then now like I like lots of people. There aren't too many people I really dislike.
Yeah,
like Mount Rushmore.
The questions.
Hogan, Savage. I gotta say RVD. Just like even though he wasn't much of a promo guy, like in ring he was one of the best.
You don't gotta sell me on RVD. He's one of my favorites of all time too.
Oh yeah, and then I'll say Flair. If I could have like 5 spots where you can conjoin 2 heads onto one, it would be the Road Warriors.
There you go. That's a great list because you got not only the older guys but the modern and in between. So pretty cool. And
also with Hulk Hogan, like it's like we have to have red and yellow and Hollywood Hogan because the guy changed wrestling.
That's why he's on Mount Rushmore.
Oh, because he always knew. And if you think about it, if Sting would have been the third guy, it would have been big, but not as big because you needed that guy who was like the All-American, like the, hot dogs and like white bread. He was
apple pie.
He looked like a hot dog. He looked like a hot dog.
Hot dog skin, Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. thin Chinese hair.
Awesome. So how did you find e-wrestling then?
I've thought about this for a little while. It's like, I don't know what came first, me finding e-fetting, or I don't know. I mean, I haven't watched all your shows. I'm going to admit that and be completely transparent. I don't know if you ever knew about like the wrestling simulators, like the match simulator.
Yeah. Zeus Pro and such.
Yeah. And then me and my buddies, like, we had like our own like little federation. There was like 5 of us. And then, like, of course, like other, like, so we all picked the character, and you know how they work. Like the match simulator would work, right?
Yeah.
So I won't go into that. But, like, I remember during class, I would like read the results, and then sometimes it would be painstaking because it would stop you so many different times for like, oh, what's going to happen here? What move do you want to hit? Blah, blah, blah. And one of my buddies got mad. He's like, oh, this is bullshit, man. Like, I can't believe I lost. I'm like, dude, like, I don't fucking write this stuff. Like, I just automatically had the program do it. E-fetting, it was just like me being able to the early infancy stages of the internet. Like, I was just like looking around. Like I said, I can't remember if I found it was the match simulator first or through e-fetting I found the match simulator. But it was just one of those things. Like, I just searched for it and found some feds. You know, like, I remember, like, I had, like, in my mind, like, these are, like, the things I was looking for in, like, an e-fed. But I think that came a little later on. I wasn't really big on forum feds. My first fed actually probably was a forum fed. It was, like, not original characters. It was just, like, you know, playing, like, as real wrestlers.
Great. But yeah, that's one of my questions is have you ever played as a real wrestler? And if so, who were your real wrestler characters?
Well, in the first fed I was ever in, going back to like my favorites, I was Raven because, like, of course, like Triple H was taken, and I was also a big Triple H fan, DX fan. Which, like, Triple H was taken, Macho Man was taken, Stone Cold, The Rock, all those guys were taken, but no one was Raven. So I'm like, okay, I'll be Raven. So, like, you know, looking online, finding pictures and shit, and like these guys would just post these long 5,000 word colored as fuck role plays in the ring, where like Triple H or Macho Man would come to the ring like in a monster truck and shit like that. And then my contrast was Raven in the boiler room or Raven like in an alley somewhere. And I completely sucked. Of course I sucked. I couldn't think of enough fucking words because I thought about it realistically. A guy's not going to talk for 15, 20 minutes until Triple H eventually started doing that later on. But a guy's not going to talk 6 million words in long blocks of dialogue. He's going to do a quick 30-second, maybe 2 minutes. So that's how I thought about it. I wasn't good. I don't even think I was good when I was good.
It was a 500 word promo.
Oh yeah. Like now that's, you know, there's a lot of feds that do that. The micros.
Will comes to the ring. He says, I'm going to kick your ass. And then he goes to the back.
Or, I remember there was a picture of Raven with the ECW title. And then like in my role play, I said that I stole the world title.
Because you had a pick of the world title.
Yeah. I'll be hit with a belt. I don't remember how long.
I love those years and I love those stories because they're so ridiculous when you don't know how to play the game and you come up with the most obscure, random bullshit, and it's so good.
Oh yeah, I mean, I kind of think I remember it being fun. I'm not really too certain. And like I did that one fed, and then like I discovered poser feds with like, you know, poser pictures, and then that was like if I'm gonna be in a fed, it has to like have. And that's when I got left e-fetting and got back into, that was like the first things I went to. Like it's got to have poser graphics. So I found this fed. It was called, I don't know what it stood for, but it was like FFW. And they had poser. And I joined them. The character I used, I'm not 100% certain what his name was. Early on, like it was Raven. And then I had 1 or 2 characters that I created, original characters. One was the real deal Joe Brown, who is someone I use. Like I remember a couple of episodes back, guy was talking about his canon where all his characters are connected by, you know, a few things to each other or like one main person. Yeah. And Joe Brown's my guy. He, in finger quotes, like no one else can see it, but Mikey can because we're video chatting. In finger quotes, Joe Brown was a big time wrestler. Where I think he won a couple of belts when I was, you know, working him. He opened up a wrestling school and in turn trained most of the people who now I use or I have used.
That's pretty cool that you kept a legacy character who's involved with every character you had moving forward. Again, I wasn't smart enough to think that through that long.
Or I put them, they were all in the same Fed. That they like, even though like they weren't, no one's gonna fact check it. And honestly, who gives a shit? So that was FFW. I was there for like a cup of coffee, and I think I told I lost the match. I think I told the guy to go kill himself or something like that. Because I was an immature like little shithead 12, 13-year-old kid.
Oh, I thought you meant recently.
No, I still do that too. Then, and at this time, I think FFW was like a feeder Fed for like the FWO. I don't know that to be true, but I kind of like vaguely remember that. And then when I found the FWO, blew my mind. I thought it was the shit. It was FWO, the Asylum. Those were two Feds I tried so fucking hard to get into. It didn't happen. But then I told myself when I came back, I wasn't able to be in those Feds, but I want to be in a Fed that's on the same level and talked about and as popular as I thought those two Feds were. And I think I achieved that later on. But those, like, they had even though looking back, they weren't like the best. Like, if you look at, like, I looked not that long ago, I found some FWO stuff. I'm like, oh God, like, I wanted to be in that, like, looking at the graphics, but that was the draw.
At the time, it was probably nice.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. So you started as Joe Brown.
And then there was another character. It was like Exodus. It was Xodus. But like, I don't remember everything with them. That was, I took a 15-year break.
When we get to the Mikey Unlikely interview, you're going to be hearing about characters I don't remember a shit about either.
Then I remember another Fed. It was, I had befriended, it's a SAT word, a guy named Jim. And he wanted to open up his own Fed. So I was right there with him. And he had, at that time, I wasn't really a juggalo, but I did listen to the Insane Clown Posse. Not ashamed of that. And he had a character called the Ringmaster, which was one of their albums. And then I'm like, oh man, like, I'll create one of the Great Malenko. So in XCW, I was the Great Malenko, and this poser looked just like what you would think the Great Malenko would look like.
Yeah.
I did that for a cup of coffee too. And then that's when I'm like, you know what? I want to try to get some pussy. I was smoking weed a lot, and I just grew out of it. And then like my love for wrestling, like, kind of like died a little bit.
No doubt. So when did you start this long break? So when was your first era from, like, say, what year to what year?
Probably either 98 or 99 to about 2001. So it was only like a couple of years if.
Yeah. And then you said you took like a longer break. So when you came back, was Wrestle UTA what you found?
So the story with that is still smoking weed. I was
still smoking.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it, and it's just like, I wonder if Efeds are still a thing. So I Googled it.
I love how similar our stories are going to be.
They're 100% similar, because once I get into, we frequented a lot of the same companies.
Yes,
for a lot of the same reasons.
Yes, we did.
So I Google searched it, and like, all these forum Feds and like, things came up, and then like I found 3 Feds, and you see me holding up three Feds that I applied to that had all my requirements. It was really just poser and a great website. First one, which I really wanted to get into.
All those requirements.
Yeah, just 2. Was the IWF, the Internet Wrestling Federation, which was run by Dean Mason. They had the sickest graphics. They had like great gimmick matches. They actually it was called the Invasion match. It was exactly what they're doing with the Money in the Bank now. It would be the briefcase on top of a big, huge building that you'd have to fight through to ultimately get the briefcase. So WWE stole that idea from those guys.
I vehemently disagree that WWE steals ideas from eFeds. I know there is a giant argument out there. I know everyone believes their shit's been stolen. I am not of the belief that my shit's been stolen, although there have been some suspect moments.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I was just saying that to make a joke, but that is some good shit, and we all know Vince likes good shit.
That's good shit, pal.
So it was IWF who I applied to. I applied to HOW, and I applied to UTA. I applied to IWF and HOW with the same character. It was a Japanese wrestler, Hiroki Tanaka, a seasoned veteran, someone that was like a great Muda, or someone that was flashy when they were younger. And then as time went on, they kind of cut that stuff away, and they were just a grizzled old veteran. And UTA, who you know, I applied to them with La Flama Blanca.
Yes.
I did not get, obviously, I was not accepted into IWF because I think 2 days after I applied, they closed down because Dean had a meltdown, one of his many meltdowns.
I've heard of these, yes.
I tried finding it. I believe I got accepted into HOW. I can't find the email that said anything. I've been looking for it for a long time. I probably just deleted it and then deleted it. But then I got accepted into the UTA. Now, my thinking was with going with UTA, HOW was already established. It wasn't something, it was like, that's like going into, I wanted to ease back into it. UTA was just restarting. They didn't have that big of a roster. There were only a few shows in, and it was something where I could make this character start early and be a part of something, you know, thinking like,
you could establish yourself faster.
Of course, even though I knew the track record of Efeds, that if I got 6 months before this place closed down, that was like a lifetime. And then it turned into almost 2 years. So.
It was a hell of a run. It was one of my favorite runs in e-wrestling history.
It was pretty crazy. I'm not even going to lie. But then from that, I had to kind of prove to myself and see if, like, was I good or was I just like UTA/Ben good? And like, I feel like I did prove myself right that I was good. So, and then, yeah, I was in UTA. I remember Ben talking on the podcast that he thought my application was a joke.
Whoa. Hold on. Let me guide this interview before you just, why don't you just take over?
Yeah. Why don't you just?
So, on your return, how did you come up with LFB, a Mexican wrestler luchador. Under a mask?
Luchador.
I'm sorry, a luchador under a mask, and this is not your former character. How did you come up with this? What kind of concept did you use, and who was the inspiration?
Okay, now this is going to be a good answer. They're all good answers, but this is a special.
They're all good answers.
I was, again, smoking a lot of weed, and I was watching the show Eastbound and Down a lot. And on that show...
Oh, we know.
When he went to Mexico, they called him La Flama Blanca, the White Flame. And I'm like, that would be an interesting name for, like, an Efed wrestler. Because, to circle back around, I was a big fan of the FWO. And in a lot of the feds I, saw and, like, was in, it was always things about pop culture. It was always references to Adam Cole, baby. It was always references to like real world shit. Like in the FWO, they had Austin Strangler. They had Disposable Heroes, which is the Metallica song. They had Dinosaur Jr., which was a band. They had another fed I was in. There was a guy called Fixer, which was a Metallica song. In FFW, there was a stable called the Fear Factory. So it's always biting off of real life stuff and bringing it into this world. So
in ECW, there was a wrestler named Sandman. It was also a Metallica song.
And it's a comic too. So that was my inspiration for doing that. Who was he? He was like kind of like a Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero at first. And then, like, as he progressed, he was really heavy on the Seth Rollins thing because, like, as I'll go into later, what was going on with La Flama Blanca and Seth Rollins was kind of like mirror images of each other. Like, when they both did their heel turns around the same time and, they were both doing things at the same time. It was kind of like, and he was like, I enjoyed watching him. He's still one of my favorites. I don't like him as much because I feel like they kind of ruined him when he went babyface, but move-wise and all those things, he was kind of like a Seth Rollins. So that
I love La Flama Blanca.
Yeah, well, he was probably not as polarizing as John Cena, but he was probably loved and hated, probably more hated, which is probably, there's a line, because they probably just hated me as much as they hated him.
So I don't know, when I joined Wrestle UTA, I don't know if you were World Heavyweight Champion then or shortly thereafter.
When I started with La Fama Blanca, I was kind of like on the fence. Like, I didn't know if I really wanted to be heel or babyface. And Ben was just like, oh, this guy needs to be babyface. As you know, as being a former babyface, it's kind of hard to win in a competitive role play aspect when you are a babyface. It's kind of hard to win because a heel can just beat you down and just say some.
They can bury you, and all you can do is just be honorable and be good and just. It's fucking hard.
It is hard. So, at the time I was only really beating jobbers and no-shows. When it came time to go against real competition, I remember going against CBR, La Fama Blanca against CBR. He beat me, which it was what it was. Jono was a great rider, so there was nothing wrong with losing to Jono. But it was just like, as a babyface, I just feel like it just wasn't working. And then I went, at the time, just thinking about, let me go try something else. So then I discovered Rage, which you were a part of Rage for a little bit. It was IWF kind of reopened as Rage. Rage was a kind of like an underground wrestling that took place in Las Vegas. So that opened up for lots of the Las Vegas lifestyle things to interject themselves into the wrestling world. I handled a character called Lev Borlov. He was a Russian mobster who was kind of fashioned after a JBL and Mike Awesome. He was a really tall dude who was athletic, but he had brutal clotheslines and things like that. So I was able to do his whole gimmick was about the mob stuff. I would do role plays about, beating the shit out of people that owed him money. And there was drugs, there was prostitution, there was all these things because that world warranted and, accepted things like that. And then I kind of hit it. I did really well at first. In the first a month or two, I was part of a tag team champions. And we were part of a big storyline. And I thought about just making the move and just staying with Rage. Cause you remember Rage had a great website and great posers. So that
Rage had some of the best graphics I have ever seen in Efed, which is what attracted me to Rage.
And our stories are very similar at that because you were a babyface. Things weren't,
Things didn't work out for me as a babyface. I hit a glass ceiling and I couldn't break through. I couldn't win the big match. Every time I'd go up against a big champion, I would lose, and I just couldn't get the babyface promo over that hump. So that's when you hit me up about turning heel, and we'll get into that in my interview. But let's talk about you turning heel.
So then it came to me where I was thinking about just making the switch. Like I said, just staying in Rage. It was a good group of people, and then Ben had hit me up and he had said, at this show, it was a big show in Mexico. He's like, do you want to turn heel and, turn on Madman Zelinsky, who at the time was.
Oh, I had just joined. I remember this.
Yeah, they were good friends, but backstory to that. Madman had brought in his buddies. They were the Shoot Kings. You remember the Shoot Kings, right?
Yes. Graham Clausen and somebody else.
Oh, shit. Something Hatcher? Theo Hatcher or something like that?
Nathan Hatcher, something.
Yeah,
something Thatcher.
Whatever it was. And then they would do segments and they would do things together, and, La Fama Blanca wasn't involved. So storyline-wise.
Thatcher Rex.
That's it. It made total sense story-wise for him to turn heel. And I hemmed and hawed about it, and I did it because it was joining Dynasty. And those guys every one of them was someone that could have been, and for the most part was, a world champion someplace and in UTA.
And who was in Dynasty at the time?
And at the time it was Sean, the mental rapist, which I'm going to say the mental rapist a few more times before this is over.
Good. It's a great nickname.
It was Sean Jackson, the mental rapist. It was Claude Baptiste Ranier, CBR. It was Perfection. And it was KVT, Katie something Vermont Thomas, and it was the four of them. They shook hands and they formed Dynasty. Long before it became a joke. LFB and Madman went up against them. They were, the classic heel phase. They would just beat the shit out of us. This was the show in Mexico, and then it was the main event. I forget who was in the main event. I know it was Madman, and I forget who he was going against, but it was like we called it the kick heard around the world.
I remember that. That's when you turned on Madman. Yep. Madman Zielinski, the guy who had you under his wing, and you had turned heel in front of a Mexican crowd.
At home, in front of a home crowd, and that got super heat. Like, that guy had so much heat for so long in so many different ways.
It was perfect.
Actually, honestly, and it was the best thing I could have did for the character and for myself and probably for the company.
As a spectator and as a mid-carder at the time coming up as a face, it made a huge impact on me and in the storylines. It was a Fed that I was intimately involved in, where I was reading every show. I'm feedbacking regularly. So it was nice to follow along on LFB's story. He turns heel. It's a huge moment. And all of a sudden, he's in Dynasty. He's the big turn. And now he is a world title contender.
And it's like, what's the great part about all this is because you were there. Like, you experienced almost all of these things. So if like I say something that's like out of line or something that's wrong, you'll be right there to correct me. What I had pictured is that because I think Perfection was still world champion, CBR was the legacy champion, which might have still been the internet title. I'm not sure if they had the tag team titles. They might have had every single title except for the Wildfire title, which was like at the time was a tertiary title. Later on, it wound up becoming the secondary title on, the second show. But that's what my goal was to try to get that. And then that never really happened. I remember Conrad Teller, who was one of the like IWF and, Rage guys. He was champion. And then I think he no-showed a title match. And then it went to somebody. And then there was like a battle royal, which I think you were in that battle royal. Like LFB that was like October. From October to October, a 12-month time span. I think LaFama Blanca only lost one match, and it was a tag team match. So it was crazy. Like, it was fucking crazy.
It was a great run. And that's why, as a spectator, I saw you as a heavyweight contender, just running through.
It was for a huge part of it. It was just hard to not, like, I couldn't, LFB just couldn't be held back out of things.
And talk about when you make that heel turn, how easy it is to, for me at least, to use that pent up frustration as a babyface to just fucking run with it.
Well, it's not even just that. It's just you have more freedom. You can just talk as much shit as you want, and I did. Now you remember that the UTA had like the arcade, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Dynasty, there was the show after LFB turned heel that Jay had the commissioner of the night, where he was able to book all of the matches for the show.
Yep.
The show afterwards was Conrad Teller. He had acquired enough points or whatever, and he was GM of the night. And he had it was LaFama Blanca's first match as a heel against the Spectre. You remember the Spectre?
Oh, I remember the Spectre.
The Spectre was a Hall of Fame UTA guy. He was mauling people. He beat Jono. He beat CBR. He didn't lose. He was like 5 or 6-0. And LaFama Blanca beat him in a steel cage match. in my first match as a heel, writing heel as LaFama Blanca. And then from there, it just never stopped. It was just like I got into for a little while, and then I didn't know if it was just in my mind where I think I got in a groove, just burying the shit out of people. I remember I was so hot at the time, LaFama Blanca was so hot at the time that the legacy title match, because you remember All or Nothing, where it was if you were the final 6, depending on where you ended,
you won a title. It was the all year round reset. So every champion went in, they knew they were basically giving up their title,
and they tried to win it back.
Every person in the battle royal had a chance at any title. if you were like the 6th and 5th person eliminated, you were the tag team champions. If you were the 4th person eliminated, you were the Wildfire, so on and so forth, all the way up to the World Heavyweight Champion with the last person remaining.
And that was a pretty, I don't know, I think that was just Ben's idea. I had a lot of ideas.
It's a good idea, but if you're a champion, it's a shitty idea.
Well, for the most part, if you think about it, most of us got a title back. Like, I was still tag team champion, this time it was a Fama Blanca in the Second Coming, who at the time, me and Pete did not really see eye to eye.
The tag team of the damned.
Tag team of the damned. And then, me and Pete had like a rocky start, but I still talk to Pete. I love Pete. Love you, Pete. And then, Jay went from being, I think he was world champion. He went to the Wildfire. Your former boy, Will Haynes, was the legacy champion. And Sean Jackson was
we'll get into
the
that.
world champion. And it was just because LFB was just so hot at the time. And then it was, went to the legacy title match, which I didn't expect that, but it was just win after win after win. You could not keep him. He had to be in a title picture. So I went to the legacy title match. It was Will Haynes and La Fama Blanca in a steel cage match. I remember the role plays I had for that were quite crazy. Because sometimes I would blur the line of in character and out of character. It was a good time, just like story wise, and just, really feeling the groove of writing that character. But the character was just me, or because of being in Dynasty was kind of like the 4 horsemen of things. We rode around the limousines and jets. Every one of us was held gold. Most of them were former world champions. Sean Jackson was at that time a multiple-time world champion. Perfection was a multiple-time world champion. And CBR was a champion who, honestly, CBR should have been
Hall of Famer.
He should have been in the world title picture. But Jono had some things that came up, so you can't knock him for that. But I'm really that's like one thing I look back at, and I'm like, but how didn't CBR get a world title shot? But All or Nothing, from that, it was the Simon joining Dynasty. You remember that?
Simon, oh my God, what was their group name, man? What was the stable?
Oh shit, The Truth.
The Truth. Yes, they were like a little cult group.
It was like the Wyatt family, with
yes,
someone from the Hills Have Eyes was they were like some I want to say
half zombie, half man character,
and the Good Reverend. And Simon.
The Good Reverend was the leader.
Simon was a normal dude.
Simon.
He was like a big hulking dude. And I forget, that was probably my idea. I had a lot of ideas. Not all of them were good, but the ones that...
Not all of them were good.
Because at the time, he seemed committed. It was good. Because what happened was...
What had happened was...
Simon came in and he cost Will Haynes the UTA world title. And that was a thing for Will Haynes to work, that he thought he should have been world champion. And when we went against each other, I kind of just buried the shit out of Will Haynes because, at the time, me and Jason didn't like each other. Big whoop, big surprise.
What's new?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Simon, he didn't have when he was there for the little while. Simon was good. He did some things. It opened up opportunities for him, and then he just he bailed. He flaked.
Disappeared. Yes, he did. So, and that opened opportunities for others, such as one Mr. Mikey Unlikely, because it was not long after the flaking that I had joined Dynasty.
To go back, I kind of feel like I pitched you joining even then, but I think it was just because of the character, because Simon we needed a brute. We needed a big enforcer. And that's why we went with Simon. In an angle fed, it would have been perfect because we wouldn't have fucking needed him to be around. We could have just wrote for him. But But I pitched you. Everyone was on board, and that I went back and reread when you joined. It was so awesome because I wrote the match. It was Will Haynes versus Sean Jackson. It was And La Fama Blanca was on commentary. because of course I wrote it. I had to make sure I was involved in some way. And like Mikey made his, because you had taken some time off, right?
WTFC was the big group. Will Haynes, Mikey Unlikely, Bobby Dean, and Doozer. Doozer had left, and then I had to take some time off. So basically, the group disbanded. Will Haynes kept on the good fight against Dynasty.
Wait, was Doozer gone?
Yeah, he was gone.
Because I remember me and him did like a program, and then he was in the Fatal 4-Way to become number one contender.
Before I left WTFC, I was good friends with Doozer, and then he just disappeared.
Love you, Scott.
Love you, Scott. He's around now. We're good buddies again. I trash him in every high octane RP that I write, and
as you should.
He loves me, and he loves me.
But because the Mikey turn was at the Garden at the Mecca, Madison Square Garden.
The Garden.
And then I remember
the Mikey turn is
awesome.
My favorite. Not only is it obviously my favorite turn of all time, but I think it's one of the better ones in all of e-fighting that I've ever been a part of.
I feel like we handled that well, and then what came after was really well. I didn't touch on it before, but the feud that, LaFont Blanca and Madman had after the heel turn, which ended its season's beatings, like LaFont Blanca had lost. That was after that. He didn't lose until, a tag team match in September or October. So within a year, that was I'll get to it later because that's probably one of the questions, but that was a great feud. And I honestly wish Jeremy would have stayed on and we would have been able to do another, maybe a best of 3 or whatever to continue that. Cause I thought that was a great storyline and a great feud, but the Mikey and Will Haynes feud was you guys did it just, and you guys did it proper. I remember reading it back and I put in a thing. Do you remember where the guy threw the beer at you and you caught it and then you drank it?
I don't remember.
I saw it at a concert. It was a gift that was all over the internet. A singer's in the crowd and a dude throws a beer and somehow it's in a plastic cup, stays intact, and the guy takes it and just chugs it. And I put that into where, because people are filling the ring with all types of shit, as they would. Mikey Unlikely, one of the
huge baby face,
baby faces in the company, turned on his best fucking friend and joined the bad guys.
So at the end, LFB jumps in, so it's 2-on-1, and Mikey Unlikely comes running out of nowhere after being missing for some time to even the odds. And not only does he even the odds, but he comes in, and that's when he turns on Will Haynes.
They embraced, and then Mikey puts Will Haynes down with Will Haynes' own finisher, which I made sure to write it like that. And you took off after that.
I took off. That glass ceiling was gone.
And I know that wasn't a moment, I was a part of it, but it wasn't my moment, but I'm very proud of that moment because I feel like we handled that well. We didn't handle Stevie's well because,
Stevie's 1 week later after the biggest turn in the last year. Then we have Stevie the next week.
And he loses
that was kind of not handled well.
And he loses to Chris Hopper.
And he loses to Chris Hopper. I will not lose. Never mind.
Yeah, he won't lose to women. It was good times though. You remember, we were in chat. We were such obnoxious, little assholes. Just being us
all day, every day.
It was a lot of fun. But we were 4, 5, probably of the best writers in the whole company. There weren't but then that was another thing because there wasn't much in the way of competition until the other invasion happened to really go up against us.
Yes, and we'll get to that. But yeah, you're right. That was kind of the issue, is that Ben had flack because, hey, everybody who's good joins Dynasty.
I mean, that was the NWO. Guys that were just tired of getting the shit kicked out of them just joined the NWO. That's why there was 30 guys and 6 limousines. Yep.
And there wasn't 30 guys in Dynasty. There was 5 at all times, but they would rotate. Every time one would fall out, you'd replace them. And then,
because CBR was still, because he wasn't Alexander yet, right? Well, his babyface character. Because I remember he did that.
Alexander Redding, yeah.
I think that was that Alexander Redding?
No. That's the guy I'm facing now.
It was like
I'm drunk.
Lamont Alexander or Lamont, whatever it was.
LAR, yeah.
Lar. He's got a thing with fucking.
Lamont Alexander Redding. That's what it was.
Got a thing with acronyms. Because he did that. So at the time there was the 4 of us.
Well, there was the 5 of us because there was CBR, there was La Flama Blanca, there was Sean Jackson, there was Mikey Unlikely and Kendricks. And Perfection.
Yeah, and then but Perfection was like in and out because he got suspended.
He got suspended shortly after I had joined, but Jay was an integral part of getting me recruited into, because not only were you working me, but Jay was working me as well.
That's not a shocker. he works me still every like couple weeks.
Every day. We're in a stable right now, and I'm not sure I can trust that bastard.
Is that a shoot, Mikey, or is that a work?
Oh, that's a work.
Okay.
As long as he's listening to this.
You know he'll be listening to it because he wants me to talk about him, which
we will. We'll get there.
But because like you were talking about like Doozer leaving, because like I remember there was the fatal 4-way. It was Will Haynes, Chris Hopper, Doozer, and La Flama Blanca for the number 1 contendership to face Sean Jackson at Black Horizon. I can't remember when, because was I world champion at that point when you turned?
I thought so. If not you, then it was Perfection or Sean Jackson.
All I know is
one of them. All I know is it was like every world champion was in Dynasty, so I'm like, well, fuck, I'm just going to go over there.
But there was only one world champion that actually defended his title successfully.
And who is that?
It was Will Blanca. He was the longest reigning tag team champion UTA had, and the longest reigning world champion that UTA ever had. And
that's because they closed before the Hollywood Bruvs hit their stride. That's why.
It was probably when I left, and because I was burnt out. That's probably why that Fed closed.
That's why the Hollywood Bruvs took off. That's for fucking sure. So we'll get there. So anyway, La Flama Blanca, UTA. When did you win the World Heavyweight Champion?
It was Black Horizons. It was probably 16. So that was probably like March
2016.
And it was and we got a lot of flack for that. Because
it was Sean Jackson.
It was Sean Jackson. Because I had the idea to make it like a first blood match. Because there was always a lot of fuckery with Dynasty going up against Dynasty.
Yes.
And I wanted to try to. It was also another thing where, we could have handled it a different way, but we always had the mentality that just as long as the titles stood, like, because we're all adults, like, yeah. I mean, but you could say like, oh, I don't care, like, just as long as one of us has the belt. But, someone probably would have, like, if I would have lost the title, I probably would have been fucking pissed off. But we made it a first blood match, thinking in story to make more of a chance of like these guys actually fighting each other and having a winner. So to lessen the chance of something going awry story wise, to make sure Dynasty, there was an actual match that happened. Was that a good idea? From what a lot of people said, it wasn't a good idea. But, and then I kind of felt bad, cause like I like Mike. I still like Mike. I talk to Mike every now and then. Like we were buddies, I took the belt from him, but I rollerblade him.
I'm still talking to Mike too. Did you know he's still playing the game in a weird sort of way?
Yeah. And then how you and Jay always try to recruit me into the things that you guys are doing. Mike kind of subtly did.
No, but we're playing the regular way. Yeah,
he's
trying to recruit me too. He's like, Mikey, you could totally do this.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh God. Because I remember I was talking to him and talking to Jay at the same time. And I'm like, dude, like Mike's trying to like get me into this like video promo club. I'm like, I'm not doing that. But it was a good time. And then shit got crazy. Because when you're on top of the mountain, everyone wants to try to rip you down.
Absolutely. Shit did get crazy. Not only did you have epic battles with Will Haynes, but you had epic battles with the new invasion, as you earlier described it. And that was both a high-octane invasion and a defiance invasion. We had Justin Taylor, Eric Dane, and his crew.
In Team
Danger. As well as the high-octane group of Mike Best as
and Mike
Alex Beckman, Cecil Worth Farthington,
and John
Mike Best, and John Sector. So we had an invasion of like 6 or 7 guys all at once. And it created an interesting dynamic within Wrestle UTA, within the chat, within the side chats, and much, much more. I'll let you touch on all that.
But, like I had the mentality of, like UTA, like and you can, confirm this, like I was a workhorse, in character.
Yes.
Out of character.
Not only writing your own matches, you were in staff and you were the world champion. And that's not one and the same, because you were world champion first and then asked to help with, hey, can you write this extra match? Can you do this extra stuff? I was kind of always doing that shit though, because I at the time I kind of wanted to be either Ben's right hand man or run my own Fed. So like I liked the responsibility, and to like ensure shows went up on time, I would take an extra match, or doing some news things, like content. I was huge on content. Now that might have been like a detriment to people's opinions about me, which like leads into like after I leave UTA, making sure that like I was good, and it wasn't just because of like being in the UTA and being like Ben judging my role plays, because like I did a lot of things. Like I said, I wrote matches, and people would come to me because I was staff. Like I would always be helping people with backstage. People would come to me to read their role plays, like pitch me ideas. Oh, do you think this will work? Like I felt like an integral part of, like you probably know, UTA was like a big part of my life. It kind of consumed my life, especially because like of the different time zones. That Skype chat would be going crazy, and it's like, oh man, like I have to go to bed, but it's just, like everyone's on right now. Like you were afraid to miss something because there was always something. The Fed heads on West Coast time and you're on East Coast time. So
and then you have like
difference.
Jono and Stevie who are in the UK. So they're on different times. So, there's different people in and out all the time. It was ridiculous. But it was a lot of fun. When those guys came in, I kind of felt like I had to kind of like protect like my home. I had to, like I felt like I was a flagship guy of the UTA. UTA was my Fed. So it was a little bit of that, and then it was just good competition. I remember at first talking to those guys and like everything seemed cool, and then as time went on, things weren't so cool. But that'll happen.
That will happen over time. So, and honestly, as part of Dynasty, I agree that the conversation started cool and then got not so cool. But oddly, and I guess roundaboutly, today I'm still friends with those guys who I didn't like back then. So it's weird how all that works.
I'm sure if I talk to them now, like things would be civil and cordial and things like that. But at the time, where there was a lot of missed opportunities because of just, I don't know if it was egos. Yeah,
ego
probably was.
Yeah. So and on both sides, because we've got great stories, great characters, and really good situations. UTA is one of the most active Feds and most actively watched Feds I've ever been a part of.
They go another full circle. It was like I said, I wanted to be in a Fed like the FWO or the Asylum, things that people wanted to be in. And for a while, everyone wanted to be in the UTA. I remember Jason Cash did a couple of things and he didn't last, like the Howe guys. But then that was because there was like some turmoil with Howe, which is I think why they came over.
Yep. Yeah, it had come and go. Yeah, exactly.
At one time, we had like 40 fucking people on the roster in 2 shows, and Victory was my idea. I named Victory.
And we eventually split the roster into two rosters.
With the draft. And I like to think if Lafon Blanco was a world champion, like who would have put me? I probably would have been a Wrestle Show because everyone but you was on Wrestle Show.
I was the only fucker in Dynasty that was on Victory. God damn it. Free Mikey Unlikely. That's where the hashtag Free Mikey Unlikely comes from. That's where the what the hell they call that? Petition came from.
And the Stevie, like he worked it and he made it entertaining.
Yes, he did.
That's what you guys always.
Yes, he did.
I've always made things entertaining.
I've always said that, and Stevie said it first. So
I'm surprised you're admitting to that.
That's just for Stevie. So. Long story short, the Hollywood Bruvs joined Dynasty. It's not long before Perfection is gone because of suspensions and real life frustrations with the game. It's not long before Jono is gone because of life opportunities, and he moves across the planet. And then we have Sean Jackson steps away. And it's not long before it's just the Hollywood Bruvs and LFB left in Dynasty.
That was like right around, I think it was International Affairs, right? That was like that was the last pay-per-view I was part of.
Yes.
You know, like
at the last blow off of Mikey and Will Haynes, it was you and Yoshi.
Yeah, it was me and Eric. It was LaFon Blanca and Eric Dane for the title. And like I was
Eric Dane.
I was burnt out. Like I just, went through just talking to you, all the things, and like it just dominated my life. And like I really needed a break. I wrote too much. And people will get mad because like remember the point system, right? You always got points for everything you did. So everything I did previously that I didn't get any credit for, I was getting credit for. And like everyone could have did it. Everyone could have did webisodes and segments and and also
extra content.
My championship defenses, I got a lot of points for defending the title, so that's why I had a huge number. And that's always something that bothered me too, because you remember the year-end awards, right?
Yes.
How did LaFon?
I remember winning. I remember winning match of the year, or was it feud of the year?
Yeah, it was feud of the year.
One of the two.
And like I always thought to myself, like, how did LaFon Blanca not win Superstar of the Year? For 11 months, he bulldogged everybody. And because I left in November and I wasn't there a full 12 months, that always annoyed me. It was just because I put a lot of hard work. Like a lot of times where like my wife would be mad. It's like, oh, what do you like? What do you like? It's like, I'm writing. Like I have to get this stuff done. Just helping out other people. Cause, if you would have like left it up to Ben, things might not have been out on time, or it just, it was just like, I just took the responsibility, and, it's always something that would just annoy me, but that's an ego thing.
Yeah.
So
definitely. And we've all been there too.
You guys got to go out on your own, and it was the best thing for you guys. And then I took a break, a much needed break. I think I went back. I think you had said something to Ben, because like you also being in chat, I had mentioned just like, dude, I'm burnt out. I'm gonna, I gotta take some time off. And then like I went on vacation too, so it was just like a thing where he knew about me being on vacation. And then like I was, school was crazy. I was like working different shifts, like working day shift one week, night shift another week. It's just like I just didn't have time, and I was burnt out. So I had left UTA, and then I got the itch, because everyone gets the itch. So a few months later, maybe 3 months later, I joined OSW, Old School Wrestling. Another Dean Mason fed. And I wanted to prove that I was good, and I wasn't just Ben good. And early on, I was the motivational superstar, Alex Reese. So like I was like a motivational like speaker type of thing. That was like my gimmick, like a Tony Robbins, which really didn't last long in like name it did, but role play wise, the role plays at OSW were like the most ridiculous shits, because it wasn't just like cutting like a normal promo. It was all story based. So everything that was like a story. So like, okay, so you were in like a fatal 4-way match. You would use your other 3 opponents as like in a story about snakes or like whatever garbage, like 3 buddies that you were in business with that you cut their throats, and you were the last guy that owned the business, like type of thing. It was like all like big metaphorical. It wasn't just cutting like shoot promos like how I was used to doing in UTA.
You can't just bury somebody. You have to be clever about
it. That took a little while to get used to. That was, I met a lot of good people there, a lot of great writers. But the real thing about them, which was the real draw, it was a great website and posers, but they were a micro-fed. So I think it was like a 500 or 600 word limit. And the thing about them, same thing with like Rage, you didn't have to write segments or really come up with storylines. That was something that the Fed did for you. So like Dean had his staff, and they were creative. They would handle all the storylines, and they would write all your segments. They would do all that stuff for you. So you didn't have any control over your character, really. It was really 2 people running the same character.
You would just react. Your job is to react to what happens.
Essentially, yeah. And then the 2 of you would just basically be a tag team and tag in and out on handling your character. It was weekly and, 500-600 words. And it got to a point later on where you didn't even have to worry about description. You can just 500 words. So that was a big draw for me. Cause, I just didn't have the time to invest. I mean, I'd still write matches. Matches were kind of short. They were just short summaries. And then I wound up becoming early on, like within the first month, tag team champions with, I forget his name, but our tag team was Pop. I forget what it stood for, but we were Pop. We were like ultimate baby faces. And then somehow, to preface all this, OSW was really big on Attitude Era characters, but imagine the Attitude Era characters with Lucha Underground. Very cinematic, very over the top production, written segments. So there was the company had homeless dudes who wrestled. One of the biggest guys in the company, one of the honestly top 2 writers, depending on the day, he was the best writer, was the Scarecrow, who was a scarecrow who came to life by black magic. So that's what OSW. I remember they had one of the characters was based off the Riddler. So he wrote role plays like the Riddler, and then they got real crazy and some of them died and they came back as zombies. Shit was fucking wild.
Really crazy, yeah. Sounds like Rage.
It's more ridiculous than Rage. Because like I said, it was Lucha Underground, so it was like a TV program. It wasn't like you were watching a WWE. You were watching Lucha Underground, where it's just the storylines were kind of crazy. Bombs were I remember explosions happened and people fucking died. It was crazy. And then I went from being the baby face, pop motivational speaker, and my partner turned on me and he wound up joining up with this therapist who in turn was responsible for killing his wife and kids or something. And then my character wound up becoming was an undercover cop who was in charge of trying to get in, cause I was watching Lucha Underground and Joey Ryan and Mr. Oh, it wasn't Mr. Cisco. It was, Reyes. I forget it, but they were undercover cops who wrestled in Lucha Underground to get intel for the wrongdoings of that El Jefe would do, that the owner would do.
Yes.
And, I pitched that to Dean, and that was probably one of the worst ideas I could ever fucking came up with. I'm like, dude, wouldn't it be awesome if Alex Reese was an undercover cop? He's like, dude, that's great. That's some good shit.
After Simon, that's the worst idea you ever had.
Yeah, dude, it was crazy. And then I had posted in the Discord about reasons why you left the Fed, and it became mandatory to feedback. And if you didn't feedback, it was an automatic loss. And I said, fuck that, because you shouldn't have to do anything like that. That's completely being a jerk off, in my opinion. And then also he wanted to bring his own characters, Dean wanted to bring his own characters into the company and role play. He wanted
to handle and Fed head.
And we had a big vote about it, and some of the guys were they probably just didn't want to piss him off, but me and a few other guys were no man, because he was a good role player. He role played in other Feds and he dominated and was high up, and it's just if he's in, especially in his own, he's just these guys will judge the role plays and they'll judge things down the middle. I'm yeah, okay. And it was just combination of the two things, and it was just yeah, I gotta bounce. I did probably a good solid 8 months, and then I had a lot of good moments. I only won the tag team titles in OSW, but I had a couple of US title matches that I probably should have won at least one of them. I was number 2 in the Invasion match, was the Money in the Bank match. I was in the top 5 of their Royal Rumble, and I beat the Scarecrow. And after I beat the Scarecrow, it was a lot of eyes. So it's look out for Alex Reese. And they had role play of the week, and it was a big thing. And I was one of 2 guys that got role play of the week back-to-back weeks. So I think I accomplished what I set out after I left UTA, that I was good.
You proved you were more than just a Ben guy.
And then I left them, and then surprise, Mikey harassing me to go fucking do things.
Surprise, Mikey Unlikely takes over Wrestle UTA and says, Will, I need you as a handler.
And before that, I kind of looked down and kind of shit on angle feds. Because like, dude, the thrill of like just role playing and just utterly just brutalizing somebody it's a great thing.
So good. It's knowing that you beat someone, it feels so good. Shout out to Lindsay Troy and Dan Ryan.
But, you were like, basically you saying that Ben had no interaction was just like, okay, I'll do it. You could have told me to fucking jump off a bridge, and I probably did at that point.
Well, I needed you. You got me into position, and then I was in position, and I needed your help.
Yeah, dude, that's why we're buddies. And honestly, like, if like you need something, I might tell you no once or twice, but ultimately I'll do it. Like this podcast.
That's why we're here today.
That was a lot of fun, and like I thank you for that. Because now, I mean, I'm not handling now, but when I do, because I always get the itch, I would definitely go to another angle fed. Because it's.
Well, let's talk about it. Ben tried to bring back Wrestle UTA as an angle fed. Mikey Unlikely was a pivotal character and the first world heavyweight champion as the angle fed. And unfortunately, that did not work out. Ben had to take a step back. He asked me if I would like to take over the Fed. I had not had much Fed head experience, but decided, fuck it, I'll give it a shot. So I recruited my friends. I asked everybody on the roster, hey, we're going angle. This is the way we're going to do it. Are you interested? And you took interest. You created a new character, as far as I know. It was Wrestle U.
Character.
Yes, brand new character. And did very, very well in the new Wrestle UTA.
Well, that's probably because I was good friends with the guy who ran the company.
Let's not talk about that because I like to give everybody their due. Just like my boss, you throw me under the bus and I try to give my employees their just.
It goes back to just me being a workhorse. And like when I want something, I try everything to try to get it. You took me on. It was like probably like 5-6 shows in. That's when you ultimately kind of like took over, and it was the Mikey reign.
Yes, that's about right. And I started I can't remember what it was called, but you had a better idea than I did. But it was the Mikey Unlikely Invitational Tournament for the World Championship.
Was, just after the Ben era.
Mikey was a world champion, and in character, since I had taken over the Fed, I didn't want to be the world champion and Fed head. So I had relinquished the title and made up a tournament.
And didn't Andy win that?
I believe so. Andy Murray or Cale Murray or one of the Murrays.
It was Andy because Cale was still in Defiance. And you made it angle because of your time in Defiance, which like it made total sense. It's like angle feds is like you have just so much control over your stuff. Like if everything from matches to your segments, it's really up to you. Whereas with like a role play fed, it's you have your role plays. Maybe you write your match, maybe you don't. Your segments you're probably writing. So it's sink or swim, and it's on you in an angle fed whether things are good or not.
If you're going to participate, you're going to do well. If you're not going to participate, you're not going to do well.
It's pretty hard to like Lou Smith would never be able to do
an angle fed
unless he like completely. But I remember we used to always joke about him because somehow that guy was like super over, but he just role played. But the rest of the UTA time was good. You brought me in, and my first storyline was with Ron Hall. I remember because Ron Hall was your janitor because you demoted him.
Yes, demoted him to custodian.
Yeah, be a dick about it, a janitor. He was a master of the custodial arts, and it started with Jay Harvey just in front of him, just knocking over the food services table, and then it grew from there. And at the pay-per-view, Harvey beat Ron Hall, and then I got put into that was kind of something I manufactured myself, and then it was. To get him started, Harvey and Crimson Ward, I think, was the next arc, and that was a good arc. I always remember this. We had this idea because Crimson Ward's like a 7-foot tall monster who at one point may or may not have been a vampire, and then he became a lunatic who just had voices in his head. Love you. Shout
out to Scott, who listens to every episode and is a big fan of. He's still in Defiance. He's still fucking rocking. Love you, Scott.
We had this idea because Jay Harvey, we talk about Jay Harvey. Jay Harvey was a brand new character, essentially like a Flamme Blanca writing style, but he's a third generation wrestler, and it's kind of like a Ric Flair type of thing. Just in a nutshell, to summarize that. So he had like a Rolls Royce. Came to a show with a Rolls Royce and Crimson Lord. The idea was Crimson Lord was just gonna like flip it over, and then like after I came up with the idea and said it to Scott like a week or two later, Braun Strowman flipped the ambulance on Raw. So can't fucking do that. So then I'm like, oh, like we'll just beat the shit. We'll just have Crimson Lord just bash it with like a bat or like whatever, and then set it on fire. So that was good. And then it was one of those feuds where they never ever. It was always a thing where Crimson Lord would, even in tag matches, like, Harvey would tag himself out if Crimson Lord was like ever in, or he would be able to get a quick attack on Crimson Lord, but Crimson Lord never really was able to get his hands on Harvey until like the pay-per-view. And then I dropped the ball and I apologized to Scott because I went on vacation and I think we stood an extra day and I didn't have internet access like I thought. So I wasn't able to contribute to the match. The match was kind of like a short, like it was all on him. Looking back, it was like a bad moment, but shit happens.
Yep. And Scott's a fucking workhorse anyway. He's crazy writer.
Yeah, a unique writer.
Yes, characters like Jestel and Dandelion have told us that many times over.
Then you brought back the Legacy title.
Yes.
And then like Jay Harvey was like super hot at the time. So it was Harvey and Stevens. I came up with the idea and I pitched it to you about making it a ladder match.
Yes.
And then I wrote that. I felt like that was a good match, had some good spots. Because at the time, Stevens, who I will always call Stevens was a babyface. Wasn't, like a pure babyface because,
he's a
there
dick.
are no such things. There's no such thing as a pure babyface. But I had a great time that whole time because like we would drink frappes together. Harvey was kind of like a kiss ass. So, and then it came time to drop the Legacy title because you wanted Harvey in the world title picture.
Yep.
So it was Harvey versus Jack Harmon just to bridge the gap and be the transition. Because then ultimately, I think Chris Ross won the Legacy title.
Yes.
Like one of the last. So it was Harmon and Harvey.
Barney.
Yeah, and then Crimson Lord cost Jay Harvey the Legacy title because he had, I think the lights went off and the lights came on, and then like Harvey's down, he puts Jack Harmon on top of Harvey. Harmon gets the 1, 2, 3. Now Jay Harvey's in the world title picture, and I remember in Murr's podcast he really didn't touch on our feud, but I thought our feud and our story was pretty good.
The Jay Harvey and Andy Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, especially with like, it was something like I always wanted to work with Andy. And with Andy, I just wanted to kind of make up for, some things that happened in UTA. So I was on my best behavior.
Yep.
Not that I had to worry. Me and him got, love you, Andy. Or I love you, Murr. Everything went fine. Everything went smooth. Like Andy's Andy. Like I have, there's no complaints about anything that Andy does. And then because the company was ending, so, I did my best in the match and we did our best. And I remember this one spot I left in there to work if there ever was a time where, because we'll get into this like in a second because of the invasion.
Yes.
The UTA invasion. To use this like little piece because Jay Harvey actually pinned Andy Murray for the Wrestle to UTA title or world title, whatever it was. But his foot was on the rope and the ref noticed it. But technically he got a 1, 2, 3 count. So that's something I could still work.
You could carry over, yeah.
Yeah. And then
I decided I was done being a Fed head. I had a good year, a little over a year run plus. And I talked to Justin over at Defiance. We decided to merge Wrestle UTA and Defiance as he was also bowing out of Defiance. And ultimately it became a group effort.
And like I was like, I don't know if you remember, I was kind of hesitant to
absolutely
jump. Because I feel like, I don't know how things are now, but at the time it was kind of like a little hostile.
And UTA was your Fed, Defiance and Howe were both known at the time. I mean, that's the way I knew them. They were the Wild Wild West. Who knew what could happen? There was clicks. There was this and that. You heard so many things.
UTA though.
And it was, yeah. We were the clique of the UTA.
Yeah. Oh, dude, like let me ask you a question. Who did you see Mikey as in the Click?
In the Click?
Like,
oh,
yeah.
I'm
kid?
I'm Triple H.
You're Triple H. Oh, yeah, but you drink a lot. Triple H doesn't drink.
Okay, then
can't
I'm Shawn Michaels then, or X Pac, one of the two. I don't know. I get high a lot.
Huh. I mean, I'd probably be Kevin Nash.
If I'm X Pac, then you're Shawn Michaels. But if you're Kevin Nash, then I'm Shawn Michaels. Is the way I feel about it.
Yeah, but you know what? Kevin Nash is like.
Either way, Stevie's Razor Ramon.
Oh yeah, he is the bad guy. So like, I was hesitant about making the jump, and like, of course, like being the salesman that you are, you sold me on. You like, you know.
That's right, baby.
And I appreciate that too, because like you never put me in.
I never put you in a bad position.
Any situation. Yeah, you never. You always have like my best interest, and like, you know, vice versa. I would never, you know, if there was an opportunity, it's like, oh, like I would tell you, like if there was like, I don't know if that's the right idea, or you should definitely come. Things are cool, and you kind of like, you know, things are different, things are cool.
Yep.
And
it's not what you've heard, is what I told you.
Oh, dude, like my time in Defiance was great. Like my time in UTA was great for the most part, but the time in Defiance was probably.
It was more chill. It's Angle Fed is just a different atmosphere than a role play Fed. Of course, role play Fed, you're competitive, you're chomping at the bit, you want to be the best. And an Angle Fed, you can just relax and chat, and you can just tell your story.
100%. And there's competition, but there's not really competition.
Yep.
I mean, I never looked at it like, you know, like, oh, I need to make sure like my storyline and my match and this and that is better than the next guy. Where like, you know, as in like a role play Fed, it's always trying to be the best. Like that's, but then like my mentality is like, if you don't want to be the best, then why am like, if I don't want to be the best, then why am I going to do it?
Well, there's a couple other aspects. I mean, you could be a comedy character. You just want to entertain. You could be whatever. You could just be having fun at the end of your career like I'm at. But I've got the competitive itch again. So maybe you never lose that.
No. And that drives you and that makes you want to be better. Like, and I completely get being a comic character and things like that. But I think at the time in UTA, I lost sight, and many of us probably lost sight of having fun.
Yep. It was a competition. It became more of, I have to beat the next guy than, well, shit, this is a great time.
And it was more work.
Yep.
Than anything.
Yep.
For me, I felt like it was more work.
Deadline's coming up. I got to write all this stuff. Yeah.
And you remember what I would do? Like, I would wait until like 2:58 in the morning and post my second role play.
Yes.
Yeah.
You and Stevie have that same mentality. I'm not letting shit fly. No one's going to read my shit before they post theirs.
Exactly. I mean, it's all about a game. It's a game and playing the game.
Yep.
But like my time in Defiance was awesome. The invasion angle was awesome. Jay Harvey being one of the top guys in Wrestle UTA, you know, I was automatically put into some good storylines. I thought the War Games match, I know everyone complained about it, but I thought the War Games match was great. And Wrestle UTA had to win at first.
Yes.
And we usually did win. Like Wrestle UTA, like Harvey was undefeated for a long time. Crimson Lord was a beast. He took the Wrestle UTA title away from Andy Murray, and we were cruising.
Yep.
You know, Chris Ross was still came in the invasion. We were all cruising, and then ultimately, you know, I think it was the next pay-per-view after that. Everything kind of just evened out, and it was just Defiance.
Yes. Agreed. It was a good way to mesh them. I agree. The storyline was fun. The War Games match was a beast. It was the longest match me and Brian have ever fucking put together. And I know you were a big part of that as well. So appreciate that. It was insane match writing.
There was like between 6 to 8 of us. Cause I know Pete was in there. I know Stevie was in there. Scott was in there. I was in there. You were in there. Brian was in there. And God only knows who else was.
It was nuts. I know me and Brian put the last 10 pages together, and that was after there was already 15 or 20. So it was, oh my God, what a Google Doc.
It was. I thought that was fun. I've been a part of many different cage matches.
It was the biggest match I ever wrote, hands down.
Yeah, and I was never a part of a War Games match. I mean, you're going to be a part of one probably soon with How.
That seems to be the trend. By the time you hear this, it will already have been determined. but pay attention, howrestling.com.
And I just thank God you don't have to fucking write that thing.
That's right. I'm done with that.
Okay, so the invasion was the first part of
And
that.
and you are still the Jay Harvey at this point.
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit, but every Fed, for the most part, that I join, I come in with a fresh character. It's always been something I've done. La Fama Blanca was a brand new character. La Fama Blanca died in UTA. I'm never going to use him anywhere else. Alex Reese literally died in OSW. So I can't use him again. Liev Borlov in Rage, I'll never use him again. But they're all characters that are tied to Joe Brown. So ultimately, on my own, I could bring them back, but I'm never going to use them anywhere else. Jay Harvey was a brand new character. I actually wanted to use before you big movie star Mikey Unlikely, I have a character, the primetime player, whatever, and he's an actor.
Yep.
Can never use that fucking character ever. You fucked it up for me.
Now I stole it. I didn't even plan to steal it. Ben put me in a fucking angle just to get me out of a match, and I took it, ran with it, and became the entire gimmick.
It was Jurassic Park, wasn't it?
I think it was. It was either Jurassic Park or it was Mikey McFly.
Yeah, I think it might have been both, because I remember those were great posers.
Great posers. I love Mikey McFly.
See, Defiance breaks my rules. They do have a great website, but they do not have posers.
No.
If Defiance had posers, Defiance is the best. They're already the best, but they'd be even better.
Love you, Brian.
Yeah, I love you, B. Brian's like one of the... I forget when I was telling you, besides you, not to kiss your ass, but Brian's like one of the best Fed heads I've had a long time. Like, I can come to him at any time with almost anything. I mean, he's, a sweetheart. I mean, for a guy that is like a vicious, brutal death rapper, or however he considers his music, and he does like Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
That guy is like, Brian, like, that's why my time in Defiance, like,
he's awesome. He's so good.
Tom's great.
Brian's great. Seth's great.
Yeah, Seth's great. Like, everyone is just like, it was just a good time. And whenever I do get the itch, it probably would be Defiance that I would go back to.
There you have it. Brian, I know you're excited to hear that. So get on Will. I'll get on him on this side, and we'll get him back in Defiance.
You already have. You always do. If it's not Jordy Defiance, it's Jordy Howe.
I'm getting you. I'm getting you back.
Come back to Howe. Come to Howe. I'm like, no, dude, I'm not doing that.
I just do that because I know Jay's gotten you.
Yeah, he'll always. So Jay Harvey, Defiance.
Yes, hit us with the Jay Harvey run in Defiance.
It was pretty eventful because we had, after the invasion angle, we went, I think, I didn't go right into the Southern Heritage picture. I'm trying to remember now. I know it was the invasion, and then it might have been the Southern Heritage with us. No, it wasn't. I honestly, now I can't even fucking remember. I had one storyline before the Southern Heritage arc with Scott Douglas. I think that might have just been me establishing myself as a character in Defiance. I would go against some brazen guys. I remember Jay Harvey went against, I think it was Gage Blackwood, just to establish himself as someone who is a legit player in the company. So, being the workhorse that I was, I worked my way up the ranks rather quickly. It was just one of those things where I remember Brian wanted to get Douglas out of many of the pictures and kind of just use him not as an enhancement talent, but just use Scott Douglas as, I'm going to say enhancement, but it wasn't really enhancement. It was just someone there to
brazen.
Yeah. No. Like, cause I was talking about with the Southern Heritage run.
Oh, okay.
Like, cause Brian wanted to not handle, and he just wanted, cause of course being Fed head.
Yeah. You don't want to get that stigma.
Yeah, exactly. But I think there was another storyline that I did before the Southern Heritage, and I can't really remember it. I don't know if it was the invasion, because I remember teasing most of the time in the invasion angle about me going after the Southern Heritage more than the Fist. I can't remember. I know I did an arc that I did things just to make Jay Harvey as like a legit, as a badass, and put him on the map that he's someone that's going to be in defiance and someone that's going to be, reckoned with. I think because I used Brazen Guys and I did all that just to boost myself up, but I can't remember the first pay-per-view who Harvey went against. It doesn't really matter. Then I had the Southern Heritage arc with Brian, and that was it was easy. It was an easy thing to write and work with Brian. He had great ideas. I had good ideas. And, I was, the guy, and I took, I guess, pride in that they saw enough in me as a writer and in my character early on to put, even though like the Fist is like the main title, like Scott Douglas made the Southern Heritage title, and a title that people should want to aspire to get. And I took pride in them choosing me to do that.
It's one of those titles that it's the second tier title, but if you treat it like you're the man, then it feels like the title.
I mean, I tried my best, but then at this same time, like my wife's pregnant, and like I knew I wasn't going to be able to
maintain it long term.
Yeah, I tried to dedicate as much time. Like I did like another arc or two after my son was born. Because that was the Elise Aries arc.
Yes, very good one, by the way.
I feel like we kind of had two arcs because I don't think it was the same arc because like Harvey bested Aries a bunch of different times. I think there was another pay-per-view. It was the pay-per-view before Harvey ultimately lost that. Because like she had one match, Aries had one match against Harvey, and like she just always lost. Jay Harvey always had her number, whether it be like fuckery like ways. Because I was always a big fan of like Eddie Guerrero and the way Eddie Guerrero did like the fake chair shot.
Yeah, throw the chair, catch, yeah. Which
I stole that, and I did that with Doozer and UTA. But with Harvey, I had like brass knuckles, and then I think Aries got the knuckles from Harvey. Hit him or whatever it was, and when the ref turns around after being like knocked around, sees the knuckles on Aries' hand and Harvey's on the ground, Harvey wins the match. So Harvey always seemed to have Aries' number, and like Billy was just like a fun person to talk to and to work with. I've never really been one for comedy.
Yes,
in like my wrestling or in like my e-wrestling, but it was like kind of hard not to. And like
he's so clever.
And Billy would always make me laugh. But like some of the things, like I would kind of no sell some of the things, like because I remember something about DVDs, and like I made some comment about his DVDs, and like there was just like little things, and like just Billy just always made me laugh, and it was good for Billy because Billy and at least Aries needed that. They needed the win, and he had a super long Southern Heritage title run, and good for him.
Yeah, at least I believe to this day has the longest title run in Defiance history.
A year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that all happened after. And it was just like, because her storyline wise, because like she already had the one with Jack Harmon, where like Harmon got the best of her, and then she beat him, and then she beat him again just to like prove, and that she didn't really need the Phenoms to, she wasn't just a tag team wrestler, she was singles wrestler, and that really put her on the map. And I was happy for Billy that I was to be a part of that. At the end, I didn't phone it in, but I just didn't have as much time to dedicate. Like I tried my best, and for a while, like I was carrying Billy's ass. That's some of the things we did, but then like, Billy had
to carry your ass at the end.
Yeah, and like I thanked him for that, and Billy's a buddy of mine, even though he's like super harsh. He's like salty. Yeah. And he's mean to me all the time.
Well, you deserve it. You're a dick.
Not always. But you know what? Like, I wish I could have stayed around a little bit longer. Because the next step for Jay Harvey would have been probably a Fist run.
Yep.
And because, that was their trajectory. And I feedbacked, being the workhorse, and that's like a constant theme of like, and like, it's like, I'm not talking any shit. I was always putting out content, and 90% of it was probably good. And then the 10% is like, but,
filler.
and that again, full circle, like I proved that no matter what, I was good, and I didn't have to just rely. I wasn't UTA good.
Yes, you weren't just a Ben guy. And whether it be Angle, Roleplay, OSW, UTA, Defiance, it didn't matter.
It's like, you had me come along because it wasn't like you just needed bodies. Like, you knew.
No, I needed good writers. Yeah, I needed help.
Yeah.
No doubt. So no, I appreciate it. It was a great run. Unfortunately, the Jay Harvey run came to an end in Defiance. And since then, about a little over a year now, maybe 2 years, you've been on break.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, you have like 18 kids. Like, even like you just, it's like I feel guilty. Like, but I know going out and like doing like, actual social things that are, not like I need to do something for myself. And like I get the itch, like I think about it, but then like I think about like if I do come back, am I gonna regret doing it? Am I gonna really have the time? So it'll come one day.
And we'll be here waiting for you, Will.
Yeah, and then I'll get a second show.
Amazing.
That's my story.
That's the story, and we're sticking to it. We're about 2 hours in.
Jesus Christ.
You said you were going to keep it concise. I think we're going to put half of this episode on Patreon.
Dude, you took like a 50-minute shit before. Like,
I took a piss. What do you want me to do? Oh, shit.
I'm just like rambling. There's going to be parts of this where it's just like, oh, he's kind of rambling. And it's just like, and that's why. If there's ever a time where I'm just rambling and talking, because Mikey's like dropping a deuce in the fucking corner of the room.
I'm not dropping a deuce anywhere. Here we go. You ready with the Twitter questions, Will?
I guess.
On the Twitter machine, we got questions for Will. Up first is at TW Combat. If you could sleep with anyone in the world, who would it be and why would it be me?
Katy Perry. Hands down, it would be Katy Perry. She's on the list.
It's not his wife. It's Katy Perry. She's on the hall pass.
Well, yeah. But, if I ever had the chance to, like, have sex with Katy Perry, my wife should probably shake my hand. She's got a list. Like, if there was ever, like, even though I wouldn't like it, but it's like, Chris Hemsworth, and I'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, how often?
Respect.
Like, how often are you going to get a chance to have sex with, like, a Katy Perry? Or Chris Hemsworth? He's on my list. Like, maybe we'll have, like, some sort of weird sandwich with Chris Hemsworth.
Sorry, TW Combat, it's not you. All right. Up next is at Heel Farigua. I don't know how to spell his name. He's my tag team partner. Stevie, who loves you, Will?
That's super sad. You don't know how to spell your own best friends. Like, say you're.
Well, it's because Murr says Fruja more than he says anything, and I don't think that's right.
To answer your question, everybody loves me. Everybody loves Will.
Everybody loves Will. Mikey loves Will. I love you, Will.
Love you too, Mikey.
Oh, there it is. Up next is at Madman Zelinsky.
Oh, God.
What is the one accomplishment in e-fetting that you are most proud of?
Something I didn't talk about before. When I was handling La Fama Blanca in UTA, La Fama Blanca not only held the UTA tag team titles, not only did he hold the UTA legacy title, he was also the UTA world champion all at the same time. And that is something I've never done before. I've heard some of the other people you've interviewed, they held like 18 titles all at one time. But I never. That just like shows you, and like from my story, I've been good everywhere. It just showed how dominant and how crazy that UTA run was with La Fama Blanca. I always wanted a poser with all three titles, but Ben lost the legacy title. Like he lost that that graphic, because that would have been I would have put that on my fucking wall somewhere.
I've got the trading card sitting right here as a bookmark. I use it every day. Up next, we got at User Poets. It's our good friend Pete. Hashtag buy Pete's book.
Love you, Pete.
Love you, Pete. He wants to know, question 1, tag team of the damned, great tag team or greatest tag team?
I feel like we should have handled things a little bit differently. We kind of got like buddy, and we shouldn't have been like that. I should have worked it where I hated this person And
should have been strange bedfellows.
yeah, despite my hatred, I was in the mentality with myself and the character that I didn't want to lose, and I would say that like I wouldn't let you let me lose. So that was kind of like my mentality. We were a good tag team. That was another guy I carried the weight for. Totally Obs. No, I love you, Pete.
Obs.
And then because like me and Pete got put into that situation where we had to be tag partners because of all or nothing.
Yep.
And me and Pete really didn't see eye to eye. Like I said, we never talked. There was a big shitstorm after one of the times we had a match. And then, like, I love Pete. Like, me and Pete have a great relationship. We were tag team partners, and then we worked in Defiance. Like, we didn't, do stories together, but we were in Defiance at the same time. Pete is someone, like, I still talked to him, like, a week or two ago.
Love you, Pete.
So we were a good tag team.
We're going to move over to the Discord. We've got some questions over there. Up first, we've got at Seth is Burns. What is the basis for the Jay Harvey character, and how has he changed over the years?
I kind of touched on that a little bit when I talked about the Wrestle UTA. He was kind of just a continuation of La Fama Blanca, but more. He's kind of like the same exact thing, just with like a different body,
Different moveset, different kind of feel. Yeah.
But like a lot of the verbiage and a lot of I shouldn't say verbiage, like the tone was kind of the same, but like I would use different insult words. Cause like I remember La Fama Blanca was heavy on using the insult, mouth breather. And then
yes,
Jay Harvey, I kind of went like silly. I would call people bozo. Cause like being called a bozo is a little bit more, degrading and a little bit more like harsh than being called a mouth breather.
Yes.
And he hasn't really ever changed because, I was handling.
He didn't have a long enough life.
No, maybe a year and a half, give or take, between the two runs of Wrestle UTA and Defiance. So he was always the heel and kind of always the same thing. He was someone that always said he was the best and claimed to be the best. He was like one of those guys that you would hate because he was better than you. Because he in the ring, he could do literally everything. He wouldn't, but if he needed to do a moonsault, he could do it. If he needed to do some aerial stuff, he could do it. If he needed to, make you tap, he could do it. He was just someone that could do everything. One day, like if and when I do come back, I wouldn't pick a new character. I would probably just keep Jay Harvey alive and then progress him from there.
Yeah, he hasn't had a long enough life.
None of them really have, to be honest.
We got Warren Fitz 45 up next. He wants to know who would Will put on his Mount Rushmore of Efeds.
Ooh. Okay, so I will go old to new, FWO, because that changed and made me, that was the basis for every Fed I've been in since, something that had the website and the posers and the graphics and the characters. That's always like, I'll never, unless like dementia or something takes my memory from me, I will always remember the FWO. I will always remember the Asylum, like the brutality of what they did in like the Octagon, UTA, at the time. Cause you remember it was always referred to as like the big four of like e-fetting. It was HOW, it was 4CW, it was Boardwalk, and then it was UTA.
Yep.
I never really got into the other like companies. Like I would read some of the like shows and role plays. They weren't like, it wasn't bad. Like don't like think I'm not going to bash them. It just wasn't my style. I'm not into forum feds and pick bases and things like that. Nothing against, the people that are in them. And like, I know people will probably like tweet at me or tweet at you. It just wasn't my thing. Like everyone was talented. I get that. It wasn't me. HOW, I would read some HOW things. I didn't really ever get into them either. Like I was a homer. I think UTA lived up to that FWO mentality that I had of like, I wanted to be in a Fed like in the FWO. So FWO, the UTA, the Asylum, and honestly, not to be a homer again, Defiance. I've read a bunch of different angle feds. I remember reading Jolt. Jolt was good. Legacy of Champions, I remember reading. Two awesome feds with awesome websites and awesome graphics. But like, Defiance is just, it's like gritty. It kind of reminds me of like ECW with like out all of the extreme violence. It just has like that kind of vibe to me, and like I like it. So that would be my 4.
His other question is, who is Will most excited to see? Who is Will most excited to overtake in the Efed podcast Discord rankings?
See, I'm not going to even dignify that with a fucking answer because he knows who it is. He just wants me to talk about him.
He just wants to get over.
Yeah, he does. He's over me, and he constantly has to show me that he's over me. I'll catch you, though.
All right. His last question, what's your best spam recipe?
Dude, shouldn't I, like, ask you? Aren't you, like, a spam fan?
Spam master. He also says BORING.
Yeah, that was kind of my shtick. Because he always says I spam, because, like, I just keep messaging. Or, like, I'll do, like, that just to get, like, my numbers up.
Boring. Yeah,
I'll do that
exactly.
I'll do that in the Defiance chat. Because, like, this whole...
Oh, I know you do. I follow it. Multiple chats.
This whole quarantine thing got me so bored of, like, I don't have anything to really fill my time. Like, yeah, I'm a dad. He naps, he sleeps, he does things, he plays. I don't have to constantly, and if his mother's around, I can just sit around and, like, I need to occupy my time so I don't pull Chris Benoit and kill my family.
Oh, that's awesome. We're 2 hours in and still hitting those jokes. Up next is Jason Reeves, a.k.a. Stalker. He wants to know, if Defiance had your dream Lethal Lottery tag team tournament, what would be the bracket? You got 16 wrestlers, 8 tag teams, paired at random, squared off in a one-night tournament, all Defiance, active, inactive. Basically, it's a whole fucking shit scramble. We're going to reduce it down because 16 wrestlers is a bit too much. I'll give you 8 wrestlers. And give me a winner.
Okay. 8 wrestlers. Okay, let me get Kale Mary. Let me get Kale Mary and say Curtis Penn. Let me get...
Ooh.
Because he was a long-running, like, fist.
Absolutely.
Let me get Bronson Box and Dan Ryan as a tag team. How about that?
Legends.
So that's 4. I need 4 more. Let me get Jay Harvey, Scoot Douglas as a tag team.
Oh, Scoot Douglas.
Yeah. Okay, I need 2 more.
Sub Pop.
Dude, let me get the fucking Bruvs.
The Bruvs. I was about to say, if you exclude us, I'm gonna be pissed.
Wow. Before you started recording, we went over this question, and you got super pissed.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna pick you guys.
You weren't going to pick us to win.
Yeah.
So who are you going to pick to win, Will?
Obviously, it's going to be Scott Douglas and Jay Harvey. Without a doubt.
Brian, I expect you to edit that out and insert the Bruvs. I'm sure there's enough inflections in his voice you can put it together.
Well, depending on the brackets, it would probably be a finals of Scott Douglas and Jay Harvey versus the Bruvs.
And the Bruvs will win by a mile. Okay, up next we got at Rivs. Are you ready for Rivs' question?
Yeah, of course.
Describe how excited you were when Ben gave you the storyline arc to go heel and kicking Madman in the mouth.
I mean, like I said before, it changed everything. It changed the character. It changed the way I could write. It changed the UTA. I feel like after that, the UTA got even hotter than it was. We got more popular. We started getting more people in. It did mean everything. Was I excited about it at first? Like I said earlier, I kind of like hemmed and hawed and like was just like, oh, should I really do this? But ultimately, it was the best thing for myself and for the character. And if I didn't do that, maybe you wouldn't have had the type of success that you have. So everything happens for a reason. And I'm just glad I did it.
There you go. I agree. It's weird how small things can turn into a big run for somebody else. It's definitely odd. Up next, we got Judge Megan. You know her as Marie Van Claudio. Megan wants to know, what did you like about playing LFB, and what didn't you like about playing him?
What did I like about playing La Fama Blanca? Like everything. It was a lot of fun. I got to say a lot of horrendous things to people. I held all the gold as Wafama Blanca. You know, that was awesome. What I didn't like about Wafama Blanca, nothing really. Like everything was, I already knew with being like the guy, because Wafama Blanca was the guy. Even in like my early promos before Wafama Blanca was world champion, I always talked about him being the guy. Like, I'm the guy. When I was legacy champion, like as legacy champion, Wafama Blanca was already the guy, because what we had talked about with the Southern Heritage, making that belt equal to the world title. And like, I felt like I tried to elevate it. Even though I only defended it once and I didn't have a long run, I tried to get that title over as much as I could for the next, group of people. And being the guy, there's a lot of, everyone's coming after you. It's pressure. You just can't let it get to you. And you just gotta do your best. Like it might sound stupid me saying it, but like I was Wafama Blanca and me were like the face of the company. I had to just do things I felt like the right way, be nice and not be too much of an asshole, even though I kind of was. But, I didn't call people derogatory names about sexual orientation or anything like that. I wasn't doing that. I tried to keep myself, as professional as I could. I mean, there wasn't too many things I disliked. I got put in a lot of fires, and for the most part, Wafama Blanca came out on top.
There you have it. Her next question of 4, who else did you want to face in UTA, or who else did you want to feud with in the UTA?
It's a good question. I always wanted to do more with Chris Hopper. Me and Chris Hopper had I'm going to say a long-standing feud, but it technically really wasn't. It was things that happened over a long time period. When Chris Hopper came in, I don't know if you remember, but it was a vote to see who would face Chris Hopper, because like Chris Hopper was a big free agent signing, in finger quotes, to UTA. It was Wafama Blanca against Will Haynes. And I remember there was always something with like Will Haynes. Will Haynes just never really liked Wafama Blanca. I remember this one time he called him a beaner, and like I got like both in character and out of character, like dude, really? Like you well, what are you doing? So that was like when I first started hating him. But because Wafama Blanca won the vote and Chris Hopper just like squashed the shit out of him. But then I made him pay the next 2 or 3 times we went against each other. Because there was the big tag team match for the tag team titles. It was Chris Hopper with like the Shoot Kings against Dynasty. Crushed him then. I went up against him in a singles match for the defending the Legacy title. Wafama Blanca crushed him then. And then there was the Fatal 4, which I talked about earlier, with Doozer, Haynes, and Chris Hopper. And I crushed all of them then. I would have liked to have done like a nice long program. Actually, we did a tag team match. It was me and Stevie, the original Brubs. Me and Stevie versus it was Lou Smith and Chris Hopper. And to go back to Lou Smith, I remember it's like, dude, you need to write. It was like one of his first segments he was ever in. I'm like, dude, you need to like give me something here. Everything's done. All you have to do is just put in a line. And then, to my credit, and because I'm crazy and I'm awesome, he got like a quarter of the way through a sentence. I was like, you don't get to speak. Like, I cut him right off. So like the first time he ever wrote anything, and I cut him off. I would have liked to have actually done something with Will Haynes. Cause we only had like a couple of instances where it was, Wafama Blanca beat him for the Legacy title, and then there was the Fatal 4-way match, but I would have liked to have done something with him. I remember early on, me and Jay were talking about, we wanted to do a feud with Perfection and, Wafama Blanca. When Wafama Blanca was still babyface. And I remember we pitched it to Ben, and then it just never came up. So that's the one thing about like roleplay feds. I feel like you want to do something, but depending on how things go, it just never gets to, like a chance to like solidify. Like, cause there was always like,
because anything could happen.
I'd always like talk to someone about doing something, and it'd be like, oh, okay. And then we'd pitch it to Ben, and it would just never happen. And it's just like, well, how are we supposed to do stuff if, we have to have a match first, and then we could start, or even if we had a segment, things just wouldn't go, the way we wanted to.
It wouldn't continue down a straight path, yeah.
And it's like, that's why another reason why I like angle fetting. Like, if I want to work with somebody, I can do a whole arc or over the span of many arcs, plant seeds, come back up in like another couple of arcs and, pick things right back up. Where like, I feel like you can't really do that with RP feds. I mean, I did that with Zelensky, which is another one I would like to come back, like I said before, something I would have liked to have kept going. But like you and Will Haynes were able to do your feud. But maybe that was just the nature of the beast. And like, because you were on Victory, and I always like admired, like, it was with Cale Murray and Colton Thorpe, cause like they had their feud and like they would, do things. And I felt like being in the main title holder, it was a little hard for me because it was always a contender. So it was just always something going on. Like maybe going back, I wish I could change that, but those are the few I would like to. Well, in UTA, other feds, Sans Defiance, like I don't really care about any of those, but like, Defiance, I would have liked to have done a full thing with Kale, with Andy, but I think he left at the time because he was doing What Culture. I don't think I really did anything with Oscar Burns. That would have been nice to do. I mean, you and me could have did something because like we were, both being heels. We had a relationship anyway. It could have been, maybe not like against each other, but doing something to go do like whatever tag team wise. Because if Stevie wasn't around,
we got Megan up next with another question. Who would you say is the surprise challenge that you had in Wrestle UTA?
I don't think there really was one. I took everybody seriously. No, honestly, like I took everybody seriously, and especially if it was someone like her or Lou Smith or whoever it was when I was, when Fall Blanco was champion, I always took them seriously. I never took anyone lightly, because then if you do that, that's when, especially in an RP format, you'd lose. I was always trying to be on the top of my game, always trying to do my best, and I never took anybody lightly.
It's a good way to look at it. I think if you have that mentality all the time, like you said earlier, it's hard to get into something more satisfying, a storyline, because you're always just facing the next up and comer.
Yeah. And even if you said maybe if there was a different Fed head, maybe they would have, I don't want to say listen, but like an idea. It's like,
done it differently.
Yeah, I want to work with this guy. Like, can we do something? And then, but is what it is.
Her last question: What do you think about the current state of e-fetting?
It's never really changed. I mean, the internet wasn't as it was when I started. I mean, with Twitter, it's just people are going to be assholes. People are going to talk shit. People are, it is what it is. It's the hobby. People are going to be shitty. I remember people being shitty back in the day. People are shitty now. People are good. And it just is. It's just the way life is.
It just keeps on going on and on and on.
Same shit, different day, man.
At Percival Conrad Prince, why haven't you signed with the HWA yet?
Pass.
Up next is at Impact or at Whirlwind Head Booker. If you were to join a new Fed completely with new circle of players you've never shared with before, one, would you even do such a thing?
I already have. I did that with UTA. I've done that with a bunch of different Feds.
Presuming you did, what would you do first, and how would you go about indoctrinating yourself into that group of people?
Just wouldn't be a dick. I would just try to be. I always try to make people laugh. I have a sense of humor that's like a little, sometimes morbid and dark. But I just try to make people laugh, and just try not to be a dick.
His third question: What would it take to get you to branch out in such a way? Not much, right?
No, I mean, I joined UTA without knowing anybody. I joined Rage without knowing anybody. I joined a lot of Fed.
You were looking for a good site with good graphics, and that's what you was attracted to.
It's one of the themes.
All right, up next is at Queen Lynn's OG. Which Golden Girl do you most identify with?
Probably Dorothy, because she had the biggest dick. Or maybe they were all whores. They were all had many, many different dudes. It wasn't just Blanche being like a whore. Everyone thinks Blanche was really the whore, but they all had many dudes. But yeah, Dorothy, because her dick was the biggest.
Up next is at Colin. Why you so mean?
Like, I don't know how to take that from Colin, because like I'm not mean. I try my best to give everyone a good shot. And I can take a joke for the most part. Like I let stuff like roll off, but he's just being funny. I like Colin. He told me to go fuck myself the other day.
Well, to be honest, I wish you would go fuck yourself. Yeah. You could probably use that.
Shit, man. I was like filling up socks before you even called me.
Up last, Warren Fitz, 45. Who's on your Mount Rushmore of defiance?
I mean, you have to have Bronson Box.
Yep.
Gotta have Penn. And then, I mean, I would think you have to put Eric Dane on there.
Yep.
And then there's that last spot. And then do you let it go to Dan Ryan or do you let it go to like a Cale Murray? Because like I don't really like I went back and I read some of the old shows, but like I was more involved and more cognizant of the Cale Murray era, and like Cale took on everybody. Cale held the title for a long time. I mean, is there any way we can put their heads together, like how we were talking about at the beginning, like with the Road Warriors? They just have their heads on top of each other.
A tag team.
I don't know. It's got to be one of those two. Gun to my head. Love you, Mur. I'll put Andy on there. No, taking nothing away from Dan Ryan, but if I didn't have to put Eric Dane on there, it would be Dan Ryan and Cale Murray. But if I put Eric on there, I'll go with Cale.
It's got to be Mur. All right, Will, buddy, I appreciate you coming on. This has been a hell of a lot of fun to talk about your run in Wrestle UTA, in Defiance, in OSW, and Rage, and so much more. It's been fun asking you these questions. I'm going to get you on for some bonus content sometime soon, and really appreciate you coming in and doing this. But before we go, is there anything else you want to plug? Anything else you want to put over before we get out of here?
Well, Efed podcast.
EfedPodcast.com.
Yeah, and the AtomicDropcast.com or Atomic Dropcast.
There it is.
I've DefianceWrestling.com. You always got to read the Defiance shows.
Will, thanks so much for joining us, bud.
Thank you, Mikey.
Appreciate you.
It was good catching up.
Love you, Will.
Love you too, Mikey. Love you, Pete. Love you, Mar. Love lots of people.
Stevie, Jay.
Love Stevie, love Jay.
Dynasty, love you, Dynasty.
Shake hands with one second.
Let's shake some hands.
Love Brian, love Tom.
Seth, the whole gang.
I love my Seth. I hope he's sleeping right now. I would hope so, otherwise his mother would be fucking terrible.
Awesome, bro. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
For Will, I'm Mikey Unlikely. Thanks for joining us here on the Efed Podcast. All right, everybody, that is going to wrap us up for another edition of the Efed Podcast here on the Atomic Dropcast Network. Speaking of the Atomic Dropcast Network, guys, check out the Atomic Dropcast over at atomicdropcast.com. Check it out on YouTube. That's my other podcast with Brian. We watch 1997 wrestling. We get hammered and have fun and talk about it. It's the wrestling from our childhood through a new perspective as adults. atomicdropcast.com. Check out EWC, the number 4life.com, a great roleplay fed with about 100 handlers. Mac runs a tight ship over there. They've been going for over 20 years. Check them out, EWC, number 4life.com. Mad respect to those guys. Check out DefianceWrestling.com, my favorite, and I dare say the number one angle fed in eFeds today. DefianceWrestling.com, a tightly run ship, a loosely run ship, let's put it that way, by Brian. Have fun, write the angles you want to write with your characters, hang out with some cool people. DefianceWrestling.com. Want to thank TW Combat for supporting the show. Go follow him on Twitter at TW Combat. That's all he's looking for is a little Twitter love. I would greatly appreciate it. You would be helping out the Efed podcast just by following him. Want to thank Warren over at MDG Games. Appreciate the Modern Day Gladiators being a sponsor here on the Efed podcast. Excited, ready to check that stuff out and review it later on this year on the Efed podcast. Thanks everybody for listening to the show. Don't forget to check out the Patreon over at patreon.com/EFED podcast. Check out the Twitter at the Efed podcast and much more. We've got so much more stuff coming your way. We've got bonus content over on the Patreon. You can help out the show and get some bonus content and have more fun with us over on the Discord with the Patreon subscription. All right, guys, for Brian, I'm Mikey. Thanks again for listening to the Efed podcast, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real.
On Patreon.